Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse, episode 439. I am Peter, and returning after his Christmas break is Matt.
Yep, I'm back.
Yes, back to the regular twosome. Now, Connor does claim that he's going to have a Saturday off soon, and that there'll be a trio episode, but not this week. This week, I have read so many comics next week. I had 13 to do for the last episode just a few days ago. And then today I had 10. I ended up only doing 9. One got cut. Right. It's been a long week. It's been Christmas week. And in my defense, the book that I cut, I couldn't remember the last issue because it's been like 4 months since it came out. So that's the status of things. But this is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we talk about the books we read this week. And coming up on today's show, we have Detective Comics 1092. Superman 21, Action Comics 1081, Absolute Wonder Woman issue 3, Justice League Unlimited issue 2, Black Canary Best of the Best issue 2, Metamorpho The Element Man issue 1, Batman The Last Halloween issue 4, Green Lantern Dark issue 2, and Matt has been sticking to Batman Santa Claus Silent Night Returns, so he'll be looking at issue 5. Plus, I have a Patreon book, which is Planetary issue 4. So, lots to dive into today. And since it's week 4 of the month, meaning we don't have any solicits, which is a mercy killing after that what felt like a 4-hour show on Tuesday. If I'm on, it wasn't quite. It was like 3 hours and 40 minutes, but close enough.
Who's counting? At that point, it's 4 hours.
Well, once I'm over 3 hours, I'm starting to feel every minute, right? That's where the gauntlet feeling starts to really settle in. Where I'm like, wait, no.
Especially with Connor.
Oh, so yes, especially with Connor.
4 hours with me versus 4 hours with Connor. Either way, you lose, but you feel like you lost worse with Connor.
Yeah. So, welcome to the show, everyone. Hopefully, everyone had a nice Christmas, and obviously, we're going to New Year's before next week's episode. I don't know, Matt, you went to Universal. How was your trip?
Universal's great. We went for Grinchmas, and we went during the middle of the week, so there's very little waiting. I think the most we waited was in the afternoon to get back on the new Mario ride. We waited like an hour, so everything, was, we got everything that we wanted to done. That said, I was gonna try to ride the Mummy again. Not a big fan of that ride. It's kind of cheap, and trying to figure out the backpack scenario. With the lockers and whatever, it pissed me off so much that I just walked out of there. So I think that was about the only thing we didn't do was the Mummy. So, but yes, the Transformers ride still makes me sick. I don't know if that's just age or the way that it was made, but it's very overwhelming. Gives me a headache. Felt not so good after that. But it's a fun time. Just also can't go all day like I used to. And just age catching up with me.
Honestly, the most concerning thing you said out of all of that was that you implied that an hour waiting for a ride isn't too bad. That is insanity.
No, really it's not though. I waited far longer for worse. So, an hour is not too bad. The line kept moving. And it wasn't even, it was closer to 45 minutes than it was an hour, if I'm being truthful. So, but yes. Yeah, you're not part of the theme park culture there, Pete. So an hour wait does sound like lunacy to the outsiders.
Theme park
the
culture.
Insiders.
Yes. It's so weird. Growing up, I thought a theme park's something people went to once in a while, and the realization that there's entire fandoms of groupies that just are obsessed with going to theme parks every year.
Yeah, so that was our big one when I got married. Well, even when we were dating, my wife's a big Disneyland person. Like not even just Disney, mainly Disneyland. So begrudgingly, I started going, and we started going so much that I actually started to enjoy it. And now it's circled back around to where neither of us really enjoy it too much because, like, that theme park culture that I was mainly kidding about has kind of taken over, and it's always too busy. And it's people standing around, people not behaving, and it's not a fun time. So that's why we ended up going to Universal instead of Disney. And that was much more our speed because we kind of got to take our time and,
Disney's definitely the one that has the cult, right? The people who are obsessed, that are super into it, and who'll you'll be standing in a line and some old woman will break down in tears saying about what this place means to her. Like, it's alien to me. Absolutely alien.
Well, see, and I grew up a Six Flags guy. I like the rides, right? So like I didn't want to wait in line to sit around and sit on a boat and watch a bunch of like Small World type stuff. I didn't want to do any of that. And again, the older I get now, the more the roller coasters make me kind of motion sick. And a 15-minute boat ride where I can kind of close my eyes and nap a little bit is heaven. So so, but I grew up a Six Flags guy, and the bigger the ride, the more extreme, the better. And that's how we differed.
Yeah, I'm sure you could just pay to like go on a boat ride and just have like hours of that for much cheaper.
Yeah, but yes, much cheaper. That's again another reason that Disney, and I always say they priced us out, which is not entirely true. We could afford it, but for what? Like I'm paying all that money to be miserable. Like I can literally go anywhere else. So.
Which we did. I spent one day at Disney. I had a nice enough time, but it's like just the it's the nut jobs. It's the
Well, it is, and that's those were kind of the people we were in line with, and then now that's gotten too far, and I can't it annoys me seeing a lot of this theme park stuff and the people that have to be seen. It's not even going and enjoying it, right? Where you're talking about the the older woman that breaks down in the line because of what it means to her. I find that endearing. Right? There's a sense of history with her, and it means important. It's the people that drive me nuts are the people that just go for social media to show that they went, and they don't care. They're taking up all the lines, or like the resale people, a little while ago. So Disney World has this character called Figment. He represents Epcot. He's this little purple dragon. There was a 4-hour wait for the Figment popcorn bucket, which is just a plastic bucket shaped like Figment. But these people that had to be shown that they're getting the Figment bucket, in addition to the people that were going to buy the absolute limit that they could, so I think it was like 4, so then they could resell them for $200 online. That's what I don't like. And that's what it's become more. It seems like Disney's kind of more catering to them than to people like me and my wife. So it's okay. We'll make it back. We'll make it back there in a couple years.
I regret asking any questions, frankly. So yes, welcome to the show, everyone. Christmas happened. I don't know if I've got anything to say about the week.
How was your Christmas?
Quiet. Usual thing. Played some video games, watched some TV. That was pretty much it.
Nice.
Pretty low key, because I did my big Christmas stream at the weekend before Christmas, so I mean the actual day was pretty, and I had comics to do on the Christmas Eve, so pretty slight, if anything. Nice. But
that's what I look forward to now too. Is the kind of quieter kind of Christmases. Now that my nieces are older, one's in high school, one's in 7th grade. It's not as much chaos. It's just a lot of getting the house ready for people to come over to be here for a couple hours, and then just that mad rush. So I'm a bit envious of your Christmas, Pete.
But hey, lots of comics to talk about. That said, we won't be starting straight with that. We have the Kindle ranking, or the list formerly known as the ComiXology Top 10, which is a bit weird this week actually, because digitally DC technically released their books on Thursday, meaning the list is split into 2 again. Like it used to be. So this is just a one-time thing, because I was confused why the DC books weren't there. Because Marvel still counted as Wednesday, seemingly, just by looking at the 2 split days. But so we'll look at Thursday first, but that just means this week's DC books. What do you think number 1 was?
Let me get these all up now, because I had them all there as I've been conditioned. So I'm gonna guess Absolute Wonder Woman.
That is correct. The Absolute books are selling well, seemingly.
Let me guess number 2. Justice League Unlimited.
That's also correct.
Dialed in. I haven't even been to the comic shop in 2 weeks.
We'll go. And then what's number 3, since you're so smart?
I'm gonna go Action Comics.
Nope.
Dang it. With let's go Superman.
That's correct. Number 3 is Superman. Number 4 is Detective Comics. Then number 5 is Action Comics. Number 6 is Black Canary, Best of the Best. 7 is Batman Last Halloween. 8 is Void Rivals, so I guess, Image? Is that Image? Yeah.
Okay.
They're also Thursday this week. 9's Metamorpho.
Oh.
And 10 is Batman Gargoyle of Gotham, which, I remember enjoying the first two issues of that. I just didn't remember, and I was tight on time, so there was no chance of me going back and rereading issue 1 and 2 this week when I had, a combined 24 books to do over the course of 4 days. Green Lantern Dark came out at number 11, Green Arrow number 12, which I believe is the first of a new team. One of our loyal listeners was trying to convince me to read Green Arrow this week, and I respect it, and the Montos art is tempting, but it was a busy week, so there wasn't much chance of it happening. But notably, other than Silent Night and Power Girl, the worst selling DC book here is Flash, which is maybe a sign of where that is on the hierarchy right now. But yeah, that's what it is.
So reading that flashback, that Green Lantern, Green Arrow book that had a flashback up in it last week, felt so nice to read, Adam's Flash again.
It's funny you say that, because Connor came in last episode and said that he liked the first half, but he really doesn't like how Adams writes Flash, and the book went downhill at that point. So that's just really funny to hear. Yeah.
Oh my god, that boy.
Might as well have a look at the Marvel Day on Wednesday.
Yeah.
See where that lands. You got a guess for number 1?
Let me see. There's a adjectiveless X book. There's a X book with an adjective. Let's see. There's some of those. I'm seeing if there's any event type thing. I don't think so. There's a new number 1 though. But yeah, I'm gonna guess X-Men number 9.
That is correct. Number 2 is Time Slide issue 1, which is a Marvel book. I have no idea what that is. Looks like Cable on the cover though.
Oh yeah, that's a lot of pouches.
Yeah. Number 3 is Exceptional X-Men. Number 4 is West Coast Avengers. Number 5 is Ultimate Black Panther. Number 6 is Amazing Spider-Man. 7 is Iron Man. 8 is Mystique. 9 is Moon Knight, Fist of the Khonshu. And number 10 is Star Wars Battle of Jakku, The Last Stand. Wonderful mouthful of a title, that. So, yeah. Yeah, it seems like Marvel were mostly on their own. I think what's happened is that technically all the comic shops released their books on Thursday because obviously they were shut for Christmas. And most of the publishers pushed their digital release to match that, but Marvel seemed to have just put them out on the Wednesday as per usual.
Makes sense.
So, yeah. Nothing super exciting. It's a shame they're not mixed, because I do like having the mix to see how Marvel and DC compare to each other, but hey, that's what it is.
Yeah, there's an Ultraman Avengers crossover book that's got Ultraman fighting Galactus on the cover. I just want to point out, I think that looks cool.
All right. I assume we're not talking Earth 3 Ultraman here.
No. Talking about Ultraman from Japan, the big, kaiju fighter guy.
I figured as much, but just double checking, just in case. Just in case, Crime Syndicate and all that. Before we start the books, I should probably just say, since you weren't here for the last episode, any thoughts on the Superman trailer you'd like to...
Just many thoughts is that I like how colorful it looks. Just because it makes it stand out from where DC was. So I'll let you know this is new. And as soon as Superman whistled, I didn't think we were going to get Crypto this early in the trailers, right? For any of that type of stuff. So the fact that he whistles and Crypto shows up, and that Crypto kind of looks like one of my dogs, it hit right in the heart. So yes, very, very excited. I think Holt looks great as Luthor so far, in the little pieces that we've seen. He seems to have the vibe down, and then the outcry over Guy Gardner's haircut is perfect. So the fact that this is the first, the first taste of most people getting of Guy Gardner, and especially in the live action, and it's Nathan Fillion, who I have zero doubts will be able to nail the absurdity of that character. Just all around positive. I'm very excited.
Yeah, I do like the color, but I do think the movie looks kind of cheap. From a visual perspective, it's got that sort of cheap, overly bright digital look to it, which makes it look like a TV show from 10, 15 years ago. That won't be a big problem though if I'm super out of the story, but that was the thing that was sticking out to me watching it. I'll see how Nicholas Hoult is as Lex. It's kind of hard to gauge that, because He's in so much these days, and I always feel like I see him as Nicholas Hoult, and I don't know if
he melts into the character.
Like, I think I would have liked an older Lex, but hey, we'll see what they do with it. I honestly, as I said this last time, but I think Crypto is kind of their, like, I think a lot of casuals who never even knew Crypto existed are going to be sold on the movie because there's a dog. I think that's the genius play they're making with this. I think that's why he was the focus of this trailer.
Yeah, oppositely, I had a guy at my job tell me that he thinks it looks stupid because who cares about a super dog? And I was like, sir, do you have time for a 20-minute lecture?
Trust me, there are so many casuals who are seeing a dog and they're going to melt and they're going to go see a movie because there's a dog. I promise you that's happening.
Everyone that knows me that knows that I love Superman, which is just about everybody I know, texted me that day about that and had questions about Crypto and this, that, and the other. So that seemed to be the first question. Was about Crypto and how to make that work in today's. And again, I trust in Gunn. You know, he made me care about a talking tree. I'm sure he gets dogs just well. You know.
Yeah. All right. We'll linger on it too much because we talked about it in the last episode. But
how did Connor feel?
Optimistic enough.
That's scary.
I think we agreed that it was nice that they didn't really give much of plot away. That you didn't really know what it's about yet. Some guesses could be had, perhaps, if you're looking at fine details, but for the most part, we're not really sure yet. So,
yeah. Real quick too. Another thing is, it feels like a full universe already, just from my, I'm a massive DC Comics fan, right? And looking in that trailer, and up behind Superman, there's a Stag Industries, right, sign behind him. And like, to the normal person, that doesn't mean anything. But to me, that's one of those little details that really drives home, that this is a much larger world that Superman's occurring in, which is another bonus.
Yeah, but that also leads to the probably the biggest pitfall that I could see maybe happening because of the trailer, which is too overstuffed. There's too many characters. My theory is that because a lot of the other heroes we're seeing are part of a team, they'll be sort of introduced as a unit.
Yeah.
That it won't be a big deal, but it is possible that having Mr. Terrific, Guy Gardner, Hawkwoman, as well as Lex, and then whatever supervillain Superman's actually fighting, could be too much. But again, we'll see. We'll see how he juggles it and how streamlined it feels. But anyway, let's get into the comics, shall we? Detective Comics 1092, Tom Taylor writing with MIkel Janin on the art. So, the teenager get murdered. That was kind of the cliffhanger, as the villain got to the teenager last issue.
Kai goes by.
Kai goes there, very good. So that's kind of where we pick up here, is that we sort of see not the murder itself, but just a little bit of the scares leading up to it, and then
this character is very creepy. I forget. We know she's got a Sama. Very, very creepy the way that Janin draws them. Almost like the darkest version of Catwoman. So I appreciated seeing that. Little bits and pieces.
Yeah. But meanwhile, Batman is testing his new body strength and speed. He's testing what his abilities are like. Damien is basically agreeing, yeah, you're faster, you're this, you're that. And when they're looking at, actually, I think it's later when they mention this, but like when they're looking at what they gave him, they're like, there's some like teenage cells in here. So it's kind of like feeding into what we were saying last issue, but okay, clearly some of this is coming from these teenagers who are being killed, and that's going to be playing out here. That said, though, a big part of this issue is kind of really, I don't know if it's trying to like divert us from the truth here, because on the one hand I thought, is it trying to make us sympathize with the doctor lady so that we don't think it's her, but at the same time they also show us that she can fight, which makes me think, even if she doesn't seem like she's evil right now, it feels like it's setting us up for the fall where it's going to hit harder, because no, it is her, she is killing teenagers, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if she's not the one who's actually going out and killing them and she doesn't know where the blood's coming from. She's just, if anything, her being able to fight is almost like trying to make us think it's her, so that we'll be surprised later when the real villain in the company shows up.
it's not really a red herring, but it's like an anti-red herring where it's like, hey, look, it might be her, and then that's the swerve, is that it's not her.
Still very much a red herring, regardless of which direction. But yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not sure if that was the right, because I thought isn't a red herring something where it's not like it's anyway.
I mean, the whole point of a red herring is to make you question if or not, right?
Gotcha.
So it doesn't really matter if it's trying to make you lean this way or that way. If it's trying to lead you from something that's not the conclusion, it's a red herring, regardless of which direction each information is going in.
So I am wondering if this is like a Jekyll Hyde scenario too. Then it might be her, but it's a different, because we are playing with genetics and this, that, and the other, and so maybe she's being manipulated, and that's why she can fight, or whatnot. But yeah.
Yeah. So Batman and Robin hear about the death of the teenager. They go to the hotel room where he died, where Robin put him to be safe. So Robin's feeling pretty guilty about this. Which is probably one of my favorite little beats here, actually, is that when they hear that there's some like investigators who come in the room that they don't know who they are, what organization they're from, Batman thinks to himself, oh, like there's a lot of like stealthy ways or indirect ways that we could get information from these guys and find out who they are, but this is kind of a big deal. My son's like in pain right now because he feels guilty. We're not doing this indirectly. We're just going to go out and ask them. So yeah, they go out and beat them up a little bit, because when the guys do pull guns on them, it's not like they just beat them up for the fun of it. And they scan the ID so Oracle can look into it and whatnot.
I love that Oracle's like, make sure you give him back those IDs so it doesn't look like Batman, mugged a guy. I thought that was pretty funny.
But the big thing, though, is that the symbol on their badge is a grail, and the drug he was given was the sangreal, so it's like there's like an obvious link there, which Oracle later on does say, could that just be a coincidence? And he's like, well, we have to rule it out, but like, we'll see. And then much of the issue, though, is Batman going on a date with this pink-haired doctor lady. Where she's kind of trying to like pry at his next appointment where she's saying, oh, you're feeling better, you're doing this, she's checking him up, and he starts asking questions and she gets kind of like nervous and sort of whispers that he shouldn't be asking this, which is maybe, I guess, like possibly another red herring, but this is the implication that, oh no, there's like powers that be at the company who are more dangerous, who are probably doing the bad things. But again, that could also be just to like make it feel harder when she's the one that turns out to be evil. But they go on a date, seem to kind of hit it off. She goes a little bit cold when he starts talking about his mother, or talking about her mother rather, when he says, hey, why can't you give your mother who's sick like some of this stuff? And she's like, oh no, I can't. And she gets kind of cold and leaves. But then two guys try to mug them outside, and this is where we find out she can fight because she starts beating them up. And it leads to an impassioned moment. Tensions are high. They kiss. They're back at her place. They've had sex, but he steals data off her laptop for Oracle to go snooping in.
I kind of like Dirtbag Bruce.
Well, to be fair, I don't think he intentionally, because he even says as he's kissing her, this is a mistake, but he's fallen, he's in the moment, he's fallen for it. But it's not like he does this all with the intention of just stealing her data. It's just the opportunity presents itself.
No, but it's still not exactly ethical. So I kind of,
no, I wasn't trying to argue it was ethical, just that it wasn't predetermined. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying he's kind of a dirtbag, and I love it. Like I like when, again, I've said this a bunch. It's a refrain I always have. Is I like when Batman is fallible, and here him giving into these instincts, and we all know this is. Well, we all think this is Joe Chill's daughter, right? That's where the story started.
That's what we're leaning to right now. Yeah.
Yeah, and he doesn't know this though, right? Like he just knows this is a lady who's, his mom helped out her mom get out of a bad situation, and so, the fact that they end up sleeping together, and he's like, oh, her laptop's open. This is my opportunity, I enjoy that. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think if she's pregnant now, there's no indication of that, but let's just say she got pregnant now. Bruce would have a son whose grandfather is Joe Chill.
But again, I think there might be another swerve too that might not be Joe Chill's kid.
Oh yeah.
Right?
We've made that leap, but that could really turn out to be any woman of this age.
Right. Well, I'm just saying, even if she was in that scenario, he wasn't the actual father. Martha and Thomas still getting her out of that situation is still a net positive for this kid, you know. So I think there's a lot of open interpretation, because I saw a lot of pushback. Some people were upset that, you know, Batman sleeping with Joe Chill's daughter. This is what, you know. Oh, they always have an axe to grind with Tom Taylor. And it's just like, well, if you're reading the story, there is a bit of that intrigue here, right?
Hold on.
But that's why you read the whole story.
Hold on, though. Even if all of that is absolutely true and there's no swerves, he doesn't know it's Joe Chill's daughter.
Right.
Right? That's important to note here, is that he does not know who he's with right now. He's just seen a woman be capable. We know he likes women that can fight because he's into Selena, right? Although wait until Selena hears about this, she's going to be pissed. Right?
Let's just say there's going to be a lot more Sangreal blood, you know?
Not that they're in necessarily a super normal exclusive relationship right now. So, you know, the kind of, I mean, it's complicated to go by Facebook relationship standards.
Yeah, like we needed a multiplier on that, you know?
There's layers of complication. Honestly, though, my favorite part of the whole thing is afterwards, where he's like, "Hey, I got this information off her private computer," and both Damien and Oracle are like, "And how did you get access to that? What is this? Some kind of cover up, team up? What's happening here? So them poking fun at him when he's trying to be all grim in the Batman suit is funny to me. Like, because his family members, like, you know, not taking him seriously for the funds is always enjoyable to me. But yeah, basically though, the damning evidence here is that she has been emailing the company that hired the security team, which doesn't look good, because it makes it look like she's hiring people to go after these various teenagers. Now, again, we're early in the story. This is definitely feels like it's something that's going to be more of a red herring than a direct thing. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, and all these kids came from the Faultless Juvenile Detention Center.
Yes.
And that's who, you know, she's been emailing as well. So, because Oracle
that's who she was emailing,
Yeah, well, no, but LXR is tied in with them, right? With the Faultless Juvenile Descent or whatever. But Oracle can only read the to and the from. It's encrypted so heavily that she hasn't cracked the body of there. So, you know, who knows exactly, dude? So there's still a lot of mystery surrounding this. You know, there's a lot to play out still, which, again, I like for a book called Detective Comics, right? I like that it's keeping us on our toes.
Yeah. No, I mean, this was a solid issue. It's definitely a middle chapter. I think it focusing so heavily on Bruce and what's her name? Scarlett Martha Scott. Yes. SMS.
Like the text message.
Yes. That's what I was going for.
Well, that's how I remembered it this time around.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I'll just have to try and remember Scarlet. Joe's annoying. Like if her hair was red, I'd be like, Scarlet.
But instead it's fuchsia, which doesn't match.
Yeah, her hair doesn't match the name. Bizarrely. Not that everyone's hair color should match their name. That'd be ludicrous. Yeah. But if she's but her name's a color. You see, that's my problem.
That said, there's a picture of Connor with Red Hood, and we call him Ginge all the time. So, you know, sometimes art imitates life and vice versa.
Yeah, I think it was wise to like spend time with this character, because she'd been introduced, but we hadn't really developed her that much. This added some intrigue. It kind of made her potentially likable. The subject of her mother coming up and it being something that she doesn't want to talk about is interesting, given that all we really know about her mother, potentially, assuming she is exactly who we think, and given that her middle name is Martha, it seems quite likely. You know, all we know about her mother was what the story was with her, with the Waynes. It was the, you know, getting away from Joe Chill. It was that entire plot. So that her mother coming up in like hushed conversation and her not wanting to talk about it makes you think, oh, what's going on with her mother? What is she sick with? Is it actually a sickness? Is it something else? It feels like there's something there to explore that we'll get to. So yeah, I mean, it's an ongoing story. I'm enjoying where this is happening. And I appreciated that Batman immediately is like, okay, I have to investigate what the hell they gave me, because, you know, as we even said, that like none of this is free. Like, this has to be coming from somewhere. We have to make sure it's morally okay. So it's not like he's just saying, oh, I feel much fitter than I did, you know, than I have in the last decade. I'm just going to accept this and move on. He's immediately saying, no, we have to understand what this is and if it should be something we pursue. So
and why? Like, you know, it's not just, you know, if you give this all to the billionaires and they all live forever, they seemingly only need an X amount of dosages, right? So what also is part of their game in all of this? Is this part of some larger plot for something? So I do like, again, it's called Detective Comics, and there's all these threads coming out of here. So that's some pretty fine storytelling.
Yeah. I bet it's not like I said. I mean, I bet after another decade, it's like, oh, you have to go and get another round kind of thing. Like, you know, the idea that you have to keep stealing the youth of someone every so often to top up.
Well, and that matches what the narrative Tom Taylor likes to tell, where, like, you know, no one gets rich easily, right? That was the whole thing in his Suicide Squad, through his John Kent Superman. There's very much a pointed thread through this, and I feel like there's that thread still here. You know, like, someone's getting exploited. You know, and here it's these kids from the juvenile detention facility. Yeah,
I mean, it goes beyond exploit. I mean, when it's murder, it's just kind of murder at that point. But it's all for resources of some kind. So, obviously the art's very good from Janin. It's the Batman and Robin stuff is mostly early on when they're training or fighting the guys from the firm. Once it gets into the date stuff, it's all Janin flexing his, you know, his normal acting muscles, where he's got, like, you know, the flirtatious looks between them, the awkward moments when something comes up she doesn't want to talk about, all that stuff.
This is the most like Dick Grayson I've seen Bruce, and I don't mean that in looks, but just the kind of attitude, because he's kind of playing the affable playboy. Because there's that whole exchange between him and Scarlet about, you know, her being like, oh, well, do you own this place? He goes, why? Just because I take you here, I have to own it, right? And then as they're leaving, there's this you know, revelation that Bruce is like, oh no, because I do own this place, and he has like this sly smile on his face. And I just always, you know, that kind of look.
It's because she asks, are you not going to pay for the bill? And he's like, no, I own this place. Right. That's why it comes up.
Yeah. And so, but there's a smile on Bruce's face that I more associate with how Janin draws Dick, right? From him drawing him in so many other books. So I do like that kind of crossover.
Yeah. And even just when Damien and Babs are having a bit of fun at Bruce's expense, like that's all in the faces, it's all in the expressions. Like, obviously, the colors are great, and the way it has these different scenes with the different things. I think Scarlet, because of her hair color, does always stick out. She always she's like a beacon on the page for every single panel she's in, because her hair is just such a, you know, unnatural color that you don't see in most of the, unless you've got a superhero that happens to be dressed in like a purpley pink color around, which, you know, there isn't. Well, I mean, the Huntress, I suppose, could show up and maybe stand next to her, but like for the most part, that's not around. So she tends to stick out, and the beauty is that happens even in really normal scenes when she's just standing in her bathrobe, or never mind when she's out in a dating fancy society. That said, though, her car does seem to be the same color as her hair, which I thought was funny.
She has a vibe.
It's like Power Rangers rules. She has to keep her keep her color scheme going. All right, that's Detective Comics. What you give it about?
I'm gonna give this an 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I think an 8's fair. I wouldn't go above the 8 just because it is a middle issue where there's not a lot of exciting stuff, but there's some solid character set up for the key mystery. I guess my only hope is that whatever the revelations are with what Scarlet's up to, is that it's somehow interesting. Because I don't think that her just being the killer or not being the killer is interesting in its own right. I think there needs to be like another something. And I don't know what that is. But that's for Tom Taylor to figure out and give me. So he could do that. All right, Superman, issue 21, legacy number 864, Joshua Williamson writing with Dan Mora on the art. So this is a date issue, which the cover told me proudly.
Yes.
Which is basically Supergirl is going to look after Metropolis while Superman and Lois go on some kind of date, which he has planned a little game on the moon where they're going to throw rocks at a big target to just to.
Yeah, it's Lois likes to hustle people at darts, so like she used to. So this is gonna try to recapture that, which again I found very sweet out of Clark. Trying to find stuff that she's good at. And what else? So yeah, you said Supergirl's gonna keep an eye on Metropolis, and they where else do they go? They see
I'll jump in,
show
Matt.
with Zatanna. Yeah,
Zatanna, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they go to a magic show as part of the date.
Sorry. There's one panel of Zatanna. I did not even remember that because it's such a nothing moment.
Anyway. They see some dinosaurs, which I'm assuming is on Dinosaur Island. You know,
honestly, the montage page I didn't even register. I don't think because so there's these interlude pages that come up where it'll cut to like what other people are doing this day. And the first one is Jimmy Olsen and Silver Banshee, and all they're doing is watching a movie on the couch. What I liked about this page, though, is the way that their faces change over the panels, where Silver Banshee goes from looking disinterested to smiling at the bottom one, whereas Jimmy goes from smiling at the top panel to looking kind of scared in the bottom, which just implies that they're watching something kind of messed up, and she's getting more into it, and he's getting more freaked out, which is kind of funny to me. So there's that, and then they go to Gem World to have a picnic, but he kind of admits that he's thinking about Doomsday, and he's having a hard time not thinking about it, and everything that Time Trapper said to him. And then Amethyst shows up and says, hey, there's like a war happening here, or something. Doesn't really matter, it gets wrapped up very, very quickly. But we get another interlude page, which is Doomsday in the big chamber under the Supercart building, where we kind of get a glimpse of what Doomsday is seeing with the Black Mercy that's keeping him at bay, and he's just like crushing skulls and ripping Superman capes in half. He's
what is the bottom page supposed to be?
You mean the bottom panel?
Yeah, the bottom panel. I'm sorry. Yeah.
I don't know. He's crushing something that's beaming out energy of some kind.
Yeah. All I know is it was very terrifying. And this is what Black Mercy shows you exactly what you want, and all he wants is death and destruction, which again checks out.
Honestly, it looks like he's crushing a planet. If I was to describe that, it looks like he's crushing a planet, and there's beams of light coming out of the of it as it explodes in his hands. That'd be the best way I can describe what that is. So yeah, I mean, everything that Superman and Lois do on the date itself is kind of just fluff. It's just there to be entertaining. The next interlude is Lex and Mercy, where apparently Amnesia Lex is starting to like flirt with Mercy and like bring her coffee, and they seem to be starting something up. Clark and Lois are in Smallville, and they're like, hey, maybe the best thing for us right now is to not be Superman and Superwoman, but to just be Clark and Lois and enjoy some time. But of course, just as they're starting to do that, they hear kind of the alarms and the yell for Superman from Kara, because an entire armada has shown up in the sky, and this is the follow-up to that stuff that was being set up before, where these aliens are coming for Doomsday. They're calling themselves the Aftermath, and they're basically a bunch of different aliens who have all survived. They're all survivors from different worlds that Doomsday has killed, and they're here to get him. And if they don't hand Doomsday over, then they'll destroy Earth, which feels very hypocritical, frankly, if you ask me. But that is what their ultimatum is. So
yeah, and we find out that what we associate as Doomsday's first costume, right? That kind of jumpsuit with the red eye goggles. That's the funeral garb from this culture, right? So they had put him in that as a and where did he come up from Earth, right? It's been a while since I've read Death of Superman.
Oh, Doomsday came up. He was buried on Earth, yeah.
Yeah, so when they buried him there, that's why he was dressed in that, and it's a funeral garb from this planet. So I thought that was a fun little touch because they're all wearing that.
Specifically, it's the funeral garb from this one alien's planet. These are all these people in the Aftermath are all from different worlds.
Right, but they're all wearing the same thing.
No, not.
Yes, they are. Look behind him. They're all wearing the red eye goggle jumpsuit thing.
They are. Look at their outfits. They're all wearing. They're like he's wearing this like golden like sort of cloak thing, and they're all wearing like green like military looking suits with like metal things on their chests.
Right. He says, "This is my people's funeral garb. We wear it now because Doomsday has turned us into the living death." So that's why they're all wearing a version of it. That's the funeral clothing.
I think that's a bit of a stretch.
No, I think it is a great choice. I like it.
I'm looking at that panel, and I would not say those people behind him are wearing the same thing as him at all.
That is exactly what Doomsday was wearing when he first comes out, back in the 90s. He had that greenish, black kind of.
Okay, the body part, sure, but the hoods and like like some of them have 4 red eyes, and maybe that's just because they're alien races have aliens. 4 eyes. But
yeah, so that's what I like, is that's the funeral garb from that planet. So the Aftermath has adopted that as their symbol, because they're going to put an end to Doomsday. I think that's super cool, and it's creatively one of the things that Williamson's done that reaches back to the past that I like.
Yeah, but I would say that the head on the main guy at the front who's speaking is way more... I mean, I know it's got like an extra bit of design on it, but the eyes on him look way more like the Doomsday mask from the start of Death of Superman to me than any of the heads on the others.
Okay, then why are we only seeing the red eyes that are similar to his behind him?
We're not
even on the last panel.
Now look at the panel at the top of the page. You can see what they're wearing better.
Right, but then it's the same... It's the same kind of eyewear in all of them. Some of them have 4, some of them have 2. It's, again, he says we.
I mean, I guess you're right, but he is wearing something completely different from the rest of them. That's my issue with this, is that when he said he's wearing the funeral garb, I thought he meant his entire outfit. Like his cloak with the gold bits on it.
I think both are true, is that's his costume of the funeral garb. But in general, whatever planet he's from, I forget, because that was at the beginning of the story. We saw the planet when they all leave in this armada.
I don't even think it was this beginning. I think it was like the last issue, maybe 2 issues ago. But
okay,
regardless of whatever. Anyway, the point I was getting at before we debated about what they're wearing on the page, right? Because I think we're both kind of right here, to be honest. I think the art's just making it unclear. The point I was making, though, is that the Aftermath are all from the same planet, was the point I was getting at. Is that they're made up of like different worlds that have all survived Doomsday. Right. So presumably this funeral garb comes from at least this one dude's planet, I would assume.
Right, and that's what the thing that unites them is the death of their worlds by Doomsday. That's what unites them as a unit. So you have this big gigantic armada, that comes across, and I think that's a pretty impressive page by Mora too. To show the whole scale of it all. But yeah, this was again, I really liked all the date aspect of it. I thought that was real light and cute. And then to slam us into this armada coming in, which again I feel is like one of the 4 tropes that Williamson likes to use, right? Is an invading army and whatnot. And how many times in Flash did we get an invading army? So, but yeah, just I enjoyed this issue all around. That said, probably not my favorite. I don't know if it's the inks or the colors for Mora. I prefer when the colors are a bit more flat, because if you go and you look at the page where they're reminiscing about Clark fighting Doomsday, the way that the colors look there, I feel fit Mora's art better than some of the other ones where there's a bit more of a sheen to the rest of the coloring or the inking throughout the rest of the issue. But other than that, I think it's more being more.
You're talking about the flashback panel, because they've went out of their way to make it look more old school. No, I kind of agree, actually, especially like just there's like a sort of, they try to add this sort of glisten to the faces, which I think makes it look worse. Like just in that not even second last. It's like, I don't know, third last page. It's the one that's the big text at the bottom says Humans of Earth. And Superman's like, he looks a bit off, even though it's Mora's art and he's generally very good. But you've got this like extra glistening they've added to his forehead, to his cheek.
Yep.
And it just makes it look a bit worse, like a bit more, I don't know, plastic.
Yeah.
I like it.
It is a bit plasticky. That's why I said there's like a sheen to it. And again, like, seeing Mora's art in other places, it never looks like this, right? So that's why I had to take it that this has to be the, the colorist, or because I think Mora does his own inks, so I'm thinking this has to do something with the coloring, and it just doesn't kind of match Mora's art. But really, I would feel that's to me the weakest link of this issue.
Yeah, it makes them look a bit too young at times. Like the page when they're just in their civilian clothes in Smallville, like Clark has this weird like 12-year-old boy look to him in some of the close-ups. I mean, he obviously isn't, but that's the vibe some of the features give me. With the rosy cheeks and the dimple in the chin and the sheen to it. Yeah,
where she goes, honey, I love that I'm Superwoman and that you're Superman.
Yeah.
And she gives him a little cheek pinch. He does. He looks like he's 15.
Yeah, so I think that's something that's worth pointing out. Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of like survivors of Doomsday's previous things like coming together. I don't know if them threatening to kill a planet makes much sense to me, given what they all went through. You think they'd have a more nuanced look on that, but
yeah, you would think they'd say we're going to take Doomsday and you can try to stop us, but it will only end in your destruction. I think that would have worked, because it definitely shows that they don't want to destroy a planet, but they will, right?
Yeah.
Means to an end kind of. This is just like, hey, we're destroying your planet unless you give us what we want. It makes them feel like the bad guys here.
Well, that's the thing. You say it makes them feel like the bad guys. I think this is making it seem like they are the bad guys. Like, I think that's the intent, is that these are villains in the story, at least for now. Maybe they'll be like more of a Shades of Grey thing later on, or as Superman maybe understands them better or something. But I think right now the intent was to give us a big cliffhanger where it feels like they are the imposing force coming in. But I don't know if that's necessarily the most interesting direction to take them in. Like, the concept's so fascinating that I think that's maybe a bit too simplistic. I mean, as far as this issue goes, I think it's an okay issue. I think the ending's fine. I think a lot of the stuff before the ending is just fluff, where like it's just like cute things of like Superman and Lois doing stuff together, and none of it's particularly that exciting or like. I think just one extended conversation talking about Doomsday and what they're concerned about would have been more interesting to me than all of the other stuff they were trying to kind of like build around it, which is all the fun and games that they're having. Just because at this point in the story, like I didn't need the story to reset, because it's almost like, oh, by trying to have a day off, we're trying to reset the pacing and momentum to start again where everything's fine. But we're not at the start of a story, we're in the middle of a story. So it just kind of feels like they're forcing like a pause where it feels unnatural. I don't know, that's the way I felt anyway. I mean, honestly, the couple of panels of Doomsday, like what he sees in his head, are so interesting that I think the interludes were my favourite part of the issue until the ending.
Yeah, I would disagree. I think I liked more of the fluff than you did, but I also just enjoy seeing, Clark and Lois's relationship. And, them getting able to go and do this kind of stuff. And it's larger than life. It's playing darts on the moon with moon rocks, and boulders and going to Gem World and, Lois using her words to help, end a war between these two sides to split resources and whatnot. I like all that stuff.
I have to admit, my eyes glaze over when Gem World's involved in it, and I just don't care about it.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I did go, when we saw her in Gem World, I did go like, okay. But, just the point that Lois was able to help, negotiate a truce because, she's good with her words, and it just reminds you that, like, yes, that she has these Superwoman powers right now, but at the end of the day, Lois Lane's a problem solver no matter what. And I like that.
Sure, but there could be more of a story to it. I think fundamentally, the only interesting part of Lois having powers to me is the fact that she stole them from Zod. That's the only interesting part of it, because otherwise I'm not in love with Lois having powers. It's, as soon as they announced Lois is going to have powers, she's going to be Superwoman, I went, wait, why? Why are we doing this? You're just taking away what makes her Lois Lane. Well,
and again, maybe that's the part, because that she talks about here in the conversation, she misses being the writer. And not just because she has superpowers, it's being the editor-in-chief and all this extra responsibility. She misses just being herself. And, I think this puts a bigger a
Well,
bigger.
yeah, but you could tell that story without her having superpowers. You could just tell that story because she's the editor now, and it would, if anything, be more relatable and feel more hard hitting. Because yeah, that sounds believable that she's now in this position of power. She doesn't get to be the one writing the stories anymore. The superpowers are just, I don't know, it feels cheap.
Yeah, but
you say larger than life, like you like seeing them doing the larger than life things together, and I'm like, no, it just makes it feel less real to me that they're doing these big ridiculous things like throwing giant rocks in them and.
And it's not just the editor cheap part, it's the part where, she's part of the story and she doesn't like that. Because as a reporter, you're not supposed to be part of the story. So the fact that she has the powers and all of that other stuff, it just adds a little bit of an extra spin to things. And, again, I'm enjoying that side of it.
I mean, in theory, I get what you're saying. I don't think they do enough to like say that that's a big part of this here. She mentions it briefly and says, "Hey, how did you ever deal with this? Writing stories and not writing about yourself, kind of thing." But I don't know. It's just not the interesting part to me. But I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm enjoying this arc more than some of Williamson's previous Superman stuff because is interesting elements. The Doomsday stuff's a little bit interesting. The Zod stuff is potentially interesting, but there's just this underlying feeling now, and it always happens about 3 issues into an arc where I'm like, yeah, this still isn't just hitting where it should be to actually feel like it's paying off.
You're waiting for the rug to be pulled out.
I'm just waiting to not be underwhelmed. I would like to not be underwhelmed by Williamson.
Here's my question with the aftermath. Let's say that they just here, take Doomsday, he's your problem now. What do they do with him? Because you can't kill him because he'll just come back, right? What is the end all for Doomsday? What is the aftermath going to do differently than anybody else? And I'm hoping that's what Williamson's going to, get into. But, I've read enough of his stuff that probably not. We're going to get Superman taking out the Armada or whatnot. But yeah, I have more questions about that, from that point of view, is how would they do anything different than what the heroes of Earth have done with Doomsday?
I mean, it does. The final text does say to be continued. And what do you do with a monster like Doomsday? So the issue is saying what you just said. Yeah.
But we all know. Again, we have enough.
Which is not to defend Williamson. I expect to be underwhelmed. If there's one thing I expect from Joshua Williamson, it is underwhelming. That's what I expect.
Yeah.
But you literally just said what the text of the comic said.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna be real. Sometimes I don't read that final part, right? I look at it like set dressing. So
dear. So yeah, it's a Joshua Williamson issue. Take that for what you will. Matt, what are you rating Superman?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
6.
Wow, he doesn't like Date Night.
I can enjoy Date Night. If you give me a good date issue that tells a more compelling.
This really does feel like it should be the February issue, right? A little fluffy. What are the people in Metropolis doing for Valentine's Day? But it's not. This came out around Christmas.
Yeah, I don't know. None of the actual date activities felt that meaningful. That's the problem I had. But hey, whatever. Action Comics 1081. Mark Waid writing with Clayton Henry on the art. We're wrapping up the 12-week story. This Phantom Zone story that we've been doing since the start of October. So finally here to wrap this up. And we've been kind of up and down on it a little bit. It's been kind of maybe, positive, but a sort of muted positive. Kind of yeah, it's all right. It's it's had its ups and downs, but in the end, probably not that all-timer story maybe you'd hope for from a 12-issue Mark Waid Superman story. In this final part, I don't think shakes that feeling for me. Mainly because, one, obviously it kept evolving into new segments, which is fine, but it felt like all the segments were kind of rushed. This final issue, where it seems like all the super family are ambushed by the final dozen or so Kryptonians that are on the loose, because now that Xadu is back, which was kind of eye-rolling when it happened last issue. What I said on the show was that I'm glad it was Xadu that came back from death and not Aether, because at least Xadu was a little bit more interesting than him, but it still was a bit eye-rolly. But they capture the super family. They claim they've got this big device that will mimic the explosion of Krypton and basically turn all the Kryptonians in the Superman family into kryptonite themselves, so they'll basically die from within over time, which is very vicious sounding.
Yeah, I was like, man, this is dark. Zadu does not play.
But this is all a bunch of bullshit, because Darkseid's crack opens up behind them in space, and out comes the real Zadu, who says this is a sham, and it turns out that the Zadu we've been looking at is Martian Manhunter. This is a trap. This big device is actually a Phantom Zone projector to get them all back in the Phantom Zone, meaning that the entire beating the super family took was just a ruse. It was just them pretending to lose so the villains thought they'd won, which is a little contrived, right, for one. So that bothers me, right? I'm sure you enjoyed Connor Kent saying they jobbed out to the villains because it's a wrestling reference, but
100%. I did like that.
That's about it. But my bigger problem is that you come up with this ruse. Martian Manhunter, while pretending to be Zadu, says he literally crawled through this, like, you know, abyss that he was in space for a millennia. For every hour that passed here, it was hundreds of years for him, climbing to get back out, plotting his revenge, which, for something to just throw in here at the end, is like really so big, high concept that it's hard to just sort of take seriously. It just feels kind of like, yeah, sure, whatever, I believe you. Yeah, whatever. You know, it doesn't feel like it has any weight to it. But for that to all be a lie, and then the second that the plan's going to succeed, the real Zadu does come back from certain death, like through a crack in time. This is just contrived as shit. There's nothing that I can feel about the real Zadu popping back out here other than a huge, massive contrivance.
Well, and how does he reveal Martian Manhunter as Martian Manhunter? I don't understand that.
He just grabs him and slams him down, and Martian Manhunter just, like, I guess the pain makes him lose concentration on his shapeshifting.
I guess. But yeah, so that was a little bit weird. This one ultimately left me feeling like because there were parts of the story that I really enjoyed, and like we all know that it had to wrap up, but I don't know. Like you said, contrived is the perfect word. It just, you know, I don't feel fulfilled by where the story ended up.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, it turning out to be a ruse. Like, you could have just had them succeed. Like, why did the real Zadu have to show up? Because that just took any... Because it's a little contrived that this was all a plan, and they let themselves get beat up. Like, that's all one thing. But as soon as the real Zadu is showing up at the last second to interfere, that just, like, takes any contrivance that was there and multiply it by 1,000. Because all of a sudden, like, there's so many factors here that just feel so forced. And obviously, yeah, the plan ends up working. They blast the big device with their heat vision. It projects them all back to the Phantom Zone, which is now actually back to being a Phantom Zone. They're all sort of ghosts walking around. Supergirl's set up with the Kandor City that, you know, they can maybe be rehabilitated if they meet criteria. They'll get put back into Kandor and they can get back into society. Very few of them will ever actually meet the criteria, but at least it's there if they have the option, so it's not just like an eternal prison. So, you know, right, fair enough, all fine. So they do a tease here where there's like one zoner who's not accounted for. They think they're accounted for, but we see, what is this, Cyborg Superman? I'm not actually sure.
It has to be, because that's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah, it's someone...
He's got the Terminator eye.
Yeah, it's like someone in shadows with a Terminator eye. We don't really see any other details, but there is a Superman suit. And maybe if you look at the, like, just the far side of him, you can maybe make it a metallic arm, maybe?
Yeah.
Just maybe? But was he in the Phantom Zone?
I don't know at this point.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I can't tell you the last time I read Cyborg Superman.
Yeah, Mon-El has become the warden of the Phantom Zone. He's there to, like, sort of be there on the behalf of Kandor to assess and sort of see if they're actually becoming better people, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, that's all fine. I was a little bummed, though, because last episode, I actually said out loud, I'll be annoyed if Mark Waid doesn't pay off Clark teasing Kara about her as, like, a 12-year-old. And, you know, because he saw her in Krypton. And I was like, I want that moment. I want the moment where he brings it up, just for the joke. And I was not satisfied. They did not do it. It didn't come up at all. Everything's super serious.
Ooh. And also, like, how are they... The whole exile from Kandor thing, too. I feel like that was just something that Waid threw in there, and now he decided to have that more payoff than anything with Kara and Clark. And to have Kara be the emissary between them two, I'm just like, I don't... Like, I get it, but I don't understand why it's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated last issue that Kara went to the Science Council in Kandor and tried to talk to them about what's going on, and them basically being dicks like they always are, and Kara becoming disillusioned with them in the same way that, you know, Jor-El and so on had been in the past on Krypton. I like that part of it because Kara is someone from Krypton who remembers it, and her experiencing this sort of like bullshit bureaucracy that's getting in the way of anything getting done, and her becoming like angry with them means a lot because she understands the consequences of those decisions more than anyone perhaps does. I appreciate that element to it, but yeah, I think a lot of the wrap-up stuff here just kind of feels a little bit easy, and contrived is obviously the word we used a lot before, because yeah, the way they deal with the Phantom Zoners and the fact that the real Xadu just shows up at the last minute is just a bunch of nonsense to me.
Yeah, you do the contrivance of them using it as a trap, right? And it's just Martian Manhunter, and the real Xadu doesn't come out at all. And I think that improves the story just a little bit.
It absolutely does, yeah.
So, you know, you add that, and then all of this stuff here, and then, like, sure, the tease of Cyborg Superman's cool, but, like, I just wish I remembered the last time we saw Cyborg Superman.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, him being in the Phantom Zone, like, make it clear that if you're going to tease out a little bit, you know, kind of clear, do something that kind of mentioned Cyborg Superman earlier on when they're in the Phantom Zone. You know, I don't know.
Actually, just to be clear here, actually, on that little tease, the implication actually is that he's in the Phantom Zone right now, because we see a panel of like two zoners who are like ghosty, walking away from this big rock, and then Cyborg Superman's behind that rock. So the implication here is not so much that he is still free from the Phantom Zone, it's that he is actually somehow made it into the Phantom Zone in his corporeal form. Okay,
so that makes more sense than too. He somehow got in there.
Yeah, so what that's teasing, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's if anything, I would guess because Waid's writing Justice League Unlimited that it's maybe teasing a future plot in that. But yeah, this has been a really weird up and down Action Comics story. And if I'm comparing it to the 12-issue Detective we got like 2 years ago now with Tamaki, like I definitely preferred that Detective 12 issues. That wasn't perfect, but I definitely preferred it as a whole a lot more than this.
And it treated it episodically in a I feel a better way than here, because this just felt like 3-4 issue arcs, right? Just boom, boom, boom. I remember with the Tower, it felt like we were rotating around characters without that kind of. It felt like a bigger 12 issue story. So, but again, that just comes down to the writer style and whatnot. Yeah, I just wish that it had stuck the landing, because there was a lot of stuff up to the last 2 issues I really enjoyed. And then the last 2, it kind of felt like we were limping towards the end unnecessarily, because he had plenty of space to write the story. You know, it's not like he had to. It's not like he had to shorten certain aspects. It's like, did we need to spend that much time on Krypton with Clark in the past if you're not going to pay off anything?
Let's go back to the previous conversation we had. Do you think that time we spent with Connor and Keenan amounted to anything
outside of him taking over the Kund? No. Not at all.
Yeah, but right? the only way that came up is that when they were tracking down the Kryptonians, there was one panel of the Armada behind them being like, hey, I've got an Armada. But that was it. It was like a throwaway panel. It didn't mean anything. It didn't matter.
Right. You know, so you're absolutely correct.
There's what, like 10 issues of like side stuff that you could have like freed up to develop some of the story beats more, or hell, just shorten the issue count down. Maybe that could get rid of a couple of issues right there and get it down to 10. Maybe it'd have been a little bit better.
And again, I understand the whole idea for the Keenan and Khan stuff was to give Clayton Henry some space, right? Because you're having another artist come in there to take up page counts. But I mean, surely there's better ways to what's the word I'm looking for, to execute that, right? Like the word execution. But yeah, it kind of felt hollow towards the end here, you know, and I was hoping that he was going to stick the landing, and he stumbled a bit at the end.
It felt like nothing meaningful really happened by the end. Like there's nothing meaningful has been learned. Unless you really care about touching moments between Superman and Mon-El. And to be honest, as far as like side Superman characters go, Mon-El's kind of near the bottom of my list, so I don't really give that much of a shit if he dies of lead poisoning, if I'm perfectly honest.
No, I mean, the stabilization of the Phantom Zone and the whole ethical conversation about it, I do appreciate. from that aspect of it.
That was the most interesting. I think that, and then also the conflict with the Science Council and Krypton were, I think, the more interesting elements of this whole story.
Right. But again, you could have done that in 6 issues. I don't think you didn't need 12. So, but we're done with that now, and we jump back to monthly Action Comics.
Yeah, and it was almost like we couldn't just tell the interesting story about politics on Krypton and like how the decisions they made and how Superman and Kara feel about that. We had to like have villains that show up for a fight, and so we have to do the Zoners escaping and all that stuff that we've had the last few issues. It just all feels like tacked on for the sake of comic book action, as opposed to it being important to the story. Because it ultimately, I use that word again, it felt like fluff a lot of the time towards the end. So yeah, it's a shame. Luckily, the backup, however, has been much more interesting. So the sort of the epilogue to that here, after the prisoner has like consumed or merged with her brother to create a new being of sorts, is basically just, okay, where are we now? And Supergirl kind of like realizing, okay, she is now both, like the prisoner is both of them, and she tells the I don't even know what you call this group, the United Planets Council, or
it's the Thanagar outpost, right? So these are all Thanagarians here.
Yeah, and she's like, mission successful, delivered the prisoner to this station where they will maintain, and they will learn. Basically, the prisoner is going to keep learning what it means to destroy a world. So you see the prisoner researching, and that robot that was with Kara's kind of the prison guard there now, sort of keeping him company, or keeping them company. Maybe.
Keeping them company. Yeah, and I do love that the robot looks happy that this is the job now, right? Because there's all the little music notes.
Oh yeah.
I can imagine him going around making like do.
Well, the robot wanted purpose, and now the robot has a nice simple purpose. And then Kara gives back the power that she got from them to complete this mission, which was the eye thing that she was doing with people. Which, to be fair, if I was going to make a critique, I think after a point that didn't really matter that much, because I almost forgot about it when she pulled it out of her eye here.
Me too.
Yeah, it's been a while, so I that's a small critique I would maybe levy at it. But Kara has a little heart-to-heart with Karen, and they basically pawn
Paige.
Yeah?
It's Paige. Power Girl's name is Paige now. That's the name she took.
Oh, she changed her name?
Yeah. I talked about that in the Power Girl book.
Okay, I wasn't paying attention.
Yeah. No.
But it was Karen, though. I'm not losing my mind here.
You're not.
Okay, fine.
Now especially this version of her, right, that has the, the portaling kind of power. So
This is Paige. So is it Paige Star?
I have to go back and it's been a minute since I read Power Girl because I've been so behind.
Okay, fair enough.
I have to remember, but it is Paige because they kept calling her PG, right? Because she wanted her own new identity.
Whoa. That's Psycho Gorman.
Yes,
PG for short. That's Psycho Gorman.
So Omen goes, PG, that kind of sounds like Paige. And she goes, oh, I kind of like that. So she starts going by Paige.
All right, fair enough. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's easier than Kara and Karen because those are so close.
Yes.
So I appreciate it in that level. But I thought I was going mad there. I'm like, has it always been Paige? Am I losing my mind?
No, it was Karen Starr back in Justice Society all those years ago.
Yeah, that's the name that I've got in my head. Anyway, but anyways, this Kara sort of theorizes that she's the one person who, like, this is why Superman picked her, is that she knows what it feels like to lose a world, to have a world be destroyed, and this person, this prisoner, had felt the guilt of destroying a world, so Kara was the best person to try and not forgive her for it, but give some sort of understanding from the other side of that happening and make her and help her understand what that meant and what it was.
Well, she understands the fear and the wrath of it, right? And that was I feel like that was the whole point of Tamaki going back and using those scenes of Woman of Tomorrow, because that's a very kind of angry Kara at play. So it shows that she has that understanding of the anger side of things and being motivated by that. And so, she's kind of has that balance down. She can adapt to that better than most.
Yeah, particularly the part where she says, oh, like, after the devastation, like, out of that pain, something greater and longer lasting can come. And, she's kind of talking about herself, talking about Clark, talking about, like, the good that they can do. So it just ends with a final page of her and Power Girl flying off because there's a crisis somewhere. Interestingly, it says at the bottom, Supergirl's daring adventures will continue in 2025. Now, what that means precisely is we don't know yet, but it certainly sounds like it's teasing at least a story in a book, if not maybe her own book. So, if we get a Tamaki ongoing Supergirl book, I would be delighted.
Let's go.
Absolutely delighted.
Come up winning, right? You have a Batgirl, with Cass going on, and then you get Supergirl showing up by Tamaki.
Yeah, but you can't argue that's a tease for something. So we'll see.
Absolutely.
Because if it wasn't like a specific tease, it would be like, see more of Supergirl's adventures throughout, DC Comics or something. Yeah, it would be very vague, whereas that's a bit more specific. So, no, it was a really solid backup. It was kind of the highlight of this 12-issue thing, and when they put this all together, however they collect it, it might end up being like a 100-page little trade of just this backup. Is it that many? 12 times 8?
Is
about what's that? Give or take.
12 times 5 is 60. So add another. I'm terrible at math. That's about 96 pages, right?
Yeah, that sounds right. 96.
Yeah,
that sounds right. Yeah, my math days are long behind me. I'm sorry to say, or I'm happy to say. Yeah, no, really good, and I've really enjoyed the art in the backup as well. Very expressive. It's always like our hair always looks so majestic with all the swirls and like how flowy it looks. So it always just gives all of our big superhero moments a lot of majesty. I guess it's weird to say that about someone's hair, but it does add something there that's not. Because we spend a lot of time looking at comics with people in masks or with short hair. The long hair really adds something. But
no, she has very luscious hair. Like in that page where she looks, where it's at the bottom of the page where she's talking to Power Girl, and she goes, "No, but I have a feeling now."
Yeah.
And it feels tactile.
There's volume to it, right?
Yeah.
It's important for Wonder Woman as well. Actually, now I'm thinking about Wonder Woman's usually got if you go back to like some of her classic stories, like it's almost
especially
like,
Perez.
Yeah, the bigger the hair, the more important she feels.
Yeah.
Bizarrely.
Yeah. Well, and again, you get that's true of Starfire as well, right? When Perez drew her in the 80s, her the propulsion would look like it was coming from her hair because it was so long and luscious that it was a character trait of hers. And not necessarily this is a character trait for Kara, but it does also separate her from Power Girl, who has a more traditional bob cut.
Yeah, I never liked in the New 52 when Kara had the sort of short cut. Yeah, I never looked Supergirl to me. Like I'm just so used to her with the longer hair. Anywho, all right. I mean, obviously it's weird to rate this one because the backup is such a strong thing versus the main story. But what you rate in Action Comics?
I'm gonna give it a 6.5, and that's heavily weighted back towards the backup.
Yeah, I think that sounds about fair overall. Because the main story is probably like a 5 or maybe even a bit lower than that, honestly, which is really sad to say. But the backup, it's just kind of an epilogue issue that, like I've enjoyed the backup so much that, it probably drags it up to at least the 6 range. So I'll say that, but it's kind of a weird one to rate because I have two very different opinions on the two parts of it. All right.
But by the way, her name now is Paige Stetler.
Stetler, okay.
Stetler, yes.
All right. Absolute Wonder Woman issue 3, Kelly Thompson writing with Hayden Sherman on the art. So, disregard everything I said about Wonder Woman's hair in the last bit because Absolute Wonder Woman does not have the big luscious, high volume hair. She has more of a, I don't know. It's more thin looking. It's a bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely. It's still that iconic black. There's some flow to it, but it's not as, character defining, if you will.
This is hardened Wonder, which we find out just how hardened she is in this issue because it turns out she's been missing an arm this whole time.
I don't want to say that I shrieked, however, I did like, oh my god, was not ready for that. And what Kelly Thompson does with making that mean something. And shows just how this Wonder Woman operates. It's a really fun piece of character work.
Yeah, some fun stuff early on because she's explaining the Terracide, which is what this big sort of Cthulhu...
Tetracide.
Sorry, Tetracide. this big, Cthulhu monster thing that's come out of the ocean at the end of the last issue. She's describing how this thing works, and they do a great thing in the art here, where it's like it's on like the side of a vase from, Greek times or whatever. It's got that kind of old vase look to it. It's a really interesting touch in the art. And she describes that after a while, it will put out a sound that will draw in everyone within a certain radius to come to it. And some people will die being trampled to death during that part of it. Some people will die when it grabs them. Some people will die when it consumes them. And goes through this whole thing. It's the tetracide because it's the 4 deaths. Like, there's 4 ways it can kill you during this process. And that's the threat. She's like, hey, you have to evacuate the city. You have to get everyone far from here. I'll try and hold it off. And we get another big, great action scene where Wonder Woman goes out with her big sword, with her lasso. And she does this insane thing where she ties the lasso to the hilt of her sword and throws it and stabs it into the beast. And then starts flying around it, dragging the sword around this thing's entire body, as well as the lasso going around its entire body.
This is the most metal version of Wonder Woman we've ever had.
Oh yeah, it's badass. Like, she just looks
I love her pouch that's magical. This is the first time I can remember paying attention to the things that she pulls out of that pouch. And
I mean, I hate to reference it, and I'm surprised I know this word, but it's a bag of holding, right?
I guess so, right?
Yeah, I hate to reference Harry Potter for various reasons, but
because when I think Bag of Holding is also more of a trope for role playing, for the fantasy role playing.
Oh, true. That's a good point. It's not a Harry Potter reference. This is a Dungeons and Dragons reference. I'm a proper nerd, not one of these filthy wizard fans. On you go.
You're talking to a person that bought a new wand at Universal last week too, so that's
even after those 3 awful Fantastic Beasts movies, you're still up on that crack?
1 awful and 2 pretty okay. Right?
Pretty okay. Oh, the high standards.
Yes, I love Newt Scamander. All right. Anyways, the fact that not only does she have this sword that she is dragging through the tetracide, she pulls out this ginormous axe out of this pouch and just starts hacking away tentacles. Yeah. And that's cool as hell too. And this is where we got to the oh my god moment.
Well, no, not quite yet, because it does because they don't reveal it first yet. It's the end of the flashback leads into the actual reveal. So. Right, so obviously all this was big action. Just to comment on the art here a little bit, the paneling, the layouts. I particularly like when she throws the giant sort of buster sword at the monster. The panels are like, it's coming. It does that classic trick where you've got 2 panels side by side, but you've got the items sort of overlapping the second panel, so it has like a 3-dimensional look to it. Right, it looks like it's sticking out of the reader because of it. It's a really simple optical effect, but really smart stuff. And then it does some interesting, when she's doing all the hacking with the axe, it's all these sort of like semicircle panels, so you almost feel like the swipes of the axe actually dictate the edge of the panel. Really, really smart stuff. Just flows really well, right? And then you go to the flashback and you see Diana saves Steve from a Hydra in the water, and she makes some jokes about how the Hydra's like into you. And Steve's like, it's not mutual. Keep it away from me. And Diana goes researching and goes to what's God?
What are you talking about?
So who's looking after her? Give me her name. I'm blanking. Cersei. Do you know what?
Yeah.
The name in my head was Surrey, and I'm like, it's not Surrey. Yeah. It's not Surrey. No. It's something else.
Yeah, Cersei.
Cersei, thank you. I was missing the R.
I thought you were looking for the name of the book, and I was like,
no. I completely blanked on Cersei's name there for whatever reason. Anyway, so she goes to Cersei, and she's like, hey, like, this is the way to send him home. And she's like, no, it's not. It's like, no, this, we can send him home with this. And she's like, it says sacrifice. You need to sacrifice something for this. You can't do that. And Cersei wakes up in the middle of the night. Diana's doing the magic ritual, and she comes over. And she's like, I've sacrificed something I believe is important. It's the arm of a warrior. Diana has cut off her own arm to sacrifice to the gods or whoever to send Steve back to the surface world, which works. There's like a sort of green mist outside when they're doing stuff at the fire. He starts to like fade away, and it's kind of bittersweet because she wished she could say goodbye, but he ends up back in the beach at Gateway City, and she's left there missing an arm. And we come back to the present day fight, and her arm's all wrapped up in one of the tentacles. she just like says something magical, right? It's in a different language. You can't read it. But it makes her. It turns out her arm that she's got there, her right arm, is magical. This is something that her and Cersei did to sort of give her her arm back. But it's not always there. She just magically makes it disappear, so the tentacle has no hold of her anymore. So she's missing an arm, and she like, falls away from it, flies away. It's super badass. And then she walks into like the military commander room, and out of her bag of holding just pulls out like a Furiosa style metal arm and just plonks that on.
That's exactly what it is. I was like, this arm feels familiar, but why? And yes, it's Furiosa's arm.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, it's a bit bigger because Furiosa was only from the elbow to like down, but you know, similar vibe. Yeah. Yeah,
similar vibe to it, and yeah, I guess this is Furiosa Wonder Woman, I guess, right? Like
kinda. If we end up in a desert at some point, I won't be surprised.
Yeah, the whole to go back to the flashback real quick, the look of shock on her eyes as she's reading the book on Diana's, right? And then when she's telling Cersei, you know, she knows what she has to do. And Cersei's like, I don't know if you read it right. She goes, no, I read it. And Cersei's like, well, then you didn't understand it. She goes, no, I understand it perfectly. And just that, and then when you realize what they were talking about is her having to sacrifice either at that point, I thought it was herself or something that was important to her, you know, and it ended up being her warrior arm. I was just like, oh man. And then they don't get away from the gore. Like, it's not done in a gratuitous way, right? But her arm is definitely dripping there, you know, so it definitely makes for this big, huge moment, as quiet as it is. And it makes the sacrifice, it really makes it feel like it mattered.
Yeah, and as soon as like she wakes up and catches Diana doing something, like everything is lit by this red fire, so there's this red glow on everything, so it just all feels very. There's a vibe of just blood and like violence to the whole thing. It's very morose. So like Steve kind of realizes, wait a minute, this arm, that's what you sacrificed. And she's like, yeah, it's called the warrior's arm, and it was worth it to save you. And she kind of like touches him in the face with her metal hand, which is an interesting gesture, because obviously, I doubt she can feel that. I assume she wouldn't be able to feel that.
But the emotion behind it is still there. Like him, because the look on his face is like he's not saddened, but like it's hitting him what she gave up to get him back.
It's like a burden. It's like guilt because like I'm not worth this. Like you did this for me, and her touching him like that, and the physical touch there, regardless if she can feel it or not, you know, the emotional behind it. And he calls it a hero's arm. She goes, "No, a warrior's arm," and you know, and no, it's the hero's arm. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's very good. I like all of this. I think developed these two characters a lot in this issue. Wonder Woman feels like a badass with this metal arm, and like just how like much she's willing to do to like get things done. And also, you really believe her panic as she's trying to convince them all to leave. Like, you will all be called to this monster, and there's nothing I can do. You're going to die. So there was a page earlier that showed someone at a museum react to some of this on the news, who freaked out. Obviously, it was clear who this was from the first second, so I assume Matt was very excited when we cut to a museum and there's a redhead with glasses getting all excited about seeing Wonder Woman on the news. And right after this scene that we've just been talking about, this is where Barbara like comes to find them, runs into her. She falls and Wonder Woman catches her. I think she hit her with the door when she was coming out, funnily enough. And she catches her and says, "You shouldn't be here. You go in there and talk to Steve Trevor and he'll get you to safety." And she calls Diana Wonder Woman. This is the first time she's been called that in this. But obviously, we've been saying it left and right because we just know who she is. But this is a name that Barbara has given her. And she says, at least in this version of DC, this is what the Amazons would call their warrior, their champion. Is that the reason why she's called Wonder Woman in typical continuity? It doesn't ring a bell, but it sounds plausible.
Yeah, no, they've definitely done it. I think Rucka introduced that.
Okay.
But it was originally because she was such a wonder, and you know, different. I think in the Perez, you know, one that was in the 80s post-crisis, I think it was because she was just this you know, wondrous person that was coming out to do, you know, all these things. I like this version though, because I definitely feel like it feels familiar. So even let's just say it's familiar because we've read it in different things. It does fit that they would call their champion, their emissary.
It makes sense. I think what I like about this is that the idea that Barbara in some ways knows more about the Amazons and Themyscira than Diana does, because she's been studying it, and she says she's been studying the myth of the Amazons, and Diana's like, myth, right? But Diana didn't grow up there. Diana was taken and was put with Cersei in this hellscape, right? And they made their own little home in that island. So the idea that Barbara is going to actually maybe even teach her stuff about the Amazons that she doesn't know is going to like strengthen that friendship, which will just make it more tragic when Barbara maybe, becomes Cheetah.
Or the Amazons transform her into Cheetah because she gets too close, right? Because we don't know how these Amazons are, right? Like they're with, Oh,
they could be terrible. We don't know.
Yeah,
they could be awful.
This is Darkseid's version of the universe, right? And so all the compassion stuff that we think they stand for, what if they're just this war-bringing tribe? You know what I mean? And the wonder, that's a misnomer. But yeah, it will definitely, I thought that too. It'll make Barbara's turn into Cheetah that much more tragic, because this is now, instead of Wonder Woman teaching Barbara about these things, and it's almost this friendship that gets dissolved because of Diana's, being Wonder Woman. It is, this outside force that changes her friend, and she is helpless to stop it.
Yeah, we don't know how that's going to happen, but at least for now, what we do know is that she idolizes Wonder Woman immediately, right? So that side of the connection is there, and presumably Diana will grow attached to her because she'll teach her a bunch of stuff about Amazon she doesn't know. I'm sure she knows a lot from Cersei, but like I feel like, there's definitely some room there where she's going to learn some things that Cersei hasn't taught her, for either because Cersei never thought to tell her, didn't know to tell her, or chose not to tell her because, maybe there are some bad things that she doesn't want to tell her. Like, maybe maybe you can believe, especially since, Cersei, keep in mind, she couldn't say the word Amazon for all that time. That was a big plot point back in the first issue.
Yeah, they struck it from their memory, right?
Yeah,
and that showed how strong Diana was, that she does say it.
Yeah. So we get this great panel, which is very, you remember that movie we watched a few years ago called I Kill Giants?
Yes.
Yeah, there's a panel here that reminded me of that, where Diana's standing with her axe on the beach looking up at the big monster and the Tetracide. And her plan ends up being to go over, she pulls out like a potion, say, out of her bag, and she's like, okay, I'm going to go over there and talk to the reporters. And she goes over to the newsman who's casting and talking about the site, and she's like, hey, I need your assistance. And she takes like the reporter and the cameraman up to the top of a building, and she's like, hey, don't record this part. And he's like, wait, why can't we record this part? And she's like, well, because, all you're going to do is cause more fear, and a populace that's scared is no good for anyone. It'll just cause more chaos and panic. And they're like, you know what, that was a good answer. But we get what our plan is here to try and save everyone, since it's too late to evacuate, since it wasn't going quick enough. And even if they had started going when she said, it might not have still been quick enough. So she's like, okay, broadcast this. And she makes a speech to the audience. She says who she is. She actually calls herself Wonder Woman. Right at the end, she says, Wonder Woman believes in you. And she tries to instill confidence. She tries to calm everyone down and say, hey, you need to know this is coming because you will panic if you don't know. But this thing is going to send out a noise that will lead you all to your death. So I am temporarily going to make everyone in Gateway City deaf. Don't panic. And for anyone who doesn't see this, you need to be kind to your neighbors. If you see someone who's freaking out because they're deaf, help them. Tell them what's going on. Keep everyone calm. But this is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And again, her preaching compassion, very Wonder Woman thing, even in this absolute world, it is key to who she is.
Yeah, this is my favorite issue of this book so far. I think this is where everything started to feel like it was really coming together. Like, I like the first two issues a lot, but this feels like everything's starting to pay off, and it feels like she's really becoming Wonder Woman, but in its own way.
Yeah, through 3 issues, and we still have, Superman's out next week. I'm still behind on Absolute Batman. I think through 3 issues, the Absolute Wonder Woman is one of my favorite of the Absolute line. Just because it feels like this is the kind of Kelly Thompson book that I would seek out anyways, right? This is very much on brand for Kelly Thompson, but also it feels like a good Wonder Woman story just through 3 issues. And yeah, like everything that you've said about with the compassion and her taking on the name Wonder Woman, and we're seeing all these little things happen, but it just makes sense. It feels right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's established that it's paying off things. It's it's not just it's not just feeling right. It is right. Like, it is actually setting up and paying things off. and it feels like she's taking her mantle here and not calling herself Wonder Woman out of a sense of ego or anything like that, but saying it to give people a champion because she thinks they need it to stay calm, to try and reassure them. It's really good stuff. And so the final page is her setting off what I'm just going to say is a giant stink bomb that is going to make everyone deaf in Gateway City. So it says, next time the sound of silence. So I'm really interested. Now, I'm sure it won't be a silent issue in the sense that I'm sure Wonder Woman will still be saying things to the monster or whatever, but maybe interesting to see what they do with this idea that, you know, Steve and everyone else can't hear anything for an issue or two. Be very curious to see how they play with that.
Also, did you notice the Lazarus building on that last page?
The Lazarus building, huh?
Yeah. So look over on the right, the big tall building.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Do you know what? I didn't notice it until you pointed it out. Yeah.
I saw that. Well, I was looking around, the way that this green smoke goes around almost looks like big open mouth, right? Like it's almost like this is consuming the city as well. And again, that goes into she is from hell. Like there's going to be some aspects there, and also when they're on the in the flashback, she's telling Steve like she just has this way with the creatures that live in hell. Like, you know, that she has this way of communicating with them. And then that pays off here that, you know, her way of communicating with the news people and, you know, I don't want you to film this because this is what we need to do, but also, you know, it's part of magic, right? That this is sacred. Not everyone who hasn't earned it has a right to see this type of stuff.
Yeah, also, she says afterwards as well that, hey, play that back on a loop, because if you're showing the monster, all you're doing is scaring people. Play the message that's going to actually help them and understand what's about to happen. So
she just has this way with communicating to others.
Also, you know, maybe dare I suggest add some captions, because once everyone goes deaf, maybe have it playing with subtitles so people could see it. just an idea. Yes. So Lazarus, just for everyone who's not getting that connection, that's the company or let's say company. I don't know if that's the right term, but in Superman, Absolute Superman specifically. So we're seeing connections between the different Absolute books in some small ways. So that's interesting. Really enjoyed this issue. I think Wonder Woman's looked pretty badass in all three of these issues, but I think this issue with the arm and realizing what she's willing to do to save everyone. I think Barbara's introduction is very solid. Her excitement over meeting her and even like giving her the name Wonder Woman. Not necessarily like making it up. She didn't form that name herself, but her being the first one to say it to her and have Wonder Woman learn that name from her, I think is kind of a cool big deal. Plus this whole deafening everyone in the city to save them from this monster is pretty cool. So, and I think what I really liked about that as well is that I enjoyed her fighting the monsters in the first two issues, but I think this was the right issue to say, oh, it can't just be her fighting a monster again. We've been doing that for two issues. That there has to be like another element to it. And this thing sends out a sound. We have to think of a way to save everyone from that. So it's a different thing as opposed to just fighting. As good as the fighting has been. So, great. All right, what are you giving Absolute Wonder Woman? I'm
gonna give this a 10.
Whoa, okay. Straight to the top.
And look, it's not just for Barbara Ann. Okay, well, I know I'm a self-parody, but everything that even Pete was saying about the whole thing with the sacrifice, and it defines of who she is, and it's been the best issue thus far. I really enjoyed this.
I am going to say 9.5. I'm not going to go straight to a 10, right? That takes a perfect kind of special, but... So I'll say 9.5. All right. Justice League Unlimited issue 2, Mark Waid writing with Dan Mora on the art. So yeah, lots of characters to juggle here. A lot of pressure on Waid, just based on, you know, the problems that we've had maybe in World's Finest, and even just that Action Comic story that he's been doing over the past 12 weeks. I'm happy to say that so far I'm enjoying this, and it feels like it's got a bit more of a direction than some of those other Waid books that we've been complaining about. But yeah, and Mora's art here looks a lot more like Mora's art to my eyes. With the coloring. Me too. Yeah, I would agree with that. So yeah, parademons were in those eggs in Costa Rica that the Batman and Blue Beetle found. Team from the Justice League show up to fight them, which includes Superman, Star Sapphire, Mary Marvel, Black Lightning, Wonder Woman, Martian Manhunter, and Doctor Occult. Apparently, I had to wait for them to tell me that though, because I was never going to guess that. I was thinking like, oh, is this like Jim Corrigan or someone? Like, who is this? That's what I was thinking.
Bro, the satchel and the fedora, and I went, it's Indiana Jones. Then I was like, wait, Warner Brothers doesn't have Indiana Jones, right? Oh yeah, it's Doctor Occult, because I think Doctor Occult showed up in Batman versus Robin. If I remember, because I remember us having to look.
That sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right.
And so I was like, oh, okay. So December 2024, we're getting Doctor Occult in a Justice League book. Thank you, Mark Waid.
Yes, I mean they said unlimited and they meant it. They're pulling out all sorts of D-listers here to appear on the teams. So yeah, so they're fighting parademons. Batman's there. He's kind of beat up. He's got slashes and blood all over him. He's like, yes, we found eggs and a nest, and go and deal with that. But there's also still missing kids. So Doctor Occult and Martian Manhunter, you go find the missing kids. Wonder Woman, Star Sapphire, or Mary Marvel, you go deal with the nest, and the others like protect the civilians. He's dishing out the orders. He's doing Batman stuff. We do briefly though cut to Singapore, where Atom Smasher gets his powers back because there's a villain using his powers to like rob stuff.
Or just a person, right? Because I think that it went to a. Oh sure. I think it's a random person, but yeah, he's become a villain. He's robbing up a bank and he's giant.
Yeah. He's a bad guy now because he's using the powers for bad things. But basically, the atoms there have got like a device that turns out is going to transfer the powers back because he gets close to him, and they zap the powers into this like sort of DNA looking device, and then zap it back into Atom Smasher. So yeah. All goes well, although they do point out that this is not a painless process. It's pretty rough, so they might have to try and keep working on it to make it better. This is like the 5th time they've done it by the sounds of it. So yeah, that's fun. I appreciate that they showed us like Atom Smasher lost his powers, and obviously later on we're going to get another big reveal. Because one of my complaints before this issue is that it felt like other than one or two characters, almost no one had lost powers. At least this issue gave me a couple other ones because it felt like there was almost none. So that's fair. We don't really do much with Light Ray. Oh, not Light Ray. Airwave. That's
Airwave.
Airwave. We see him like eavesdropping on Mr. Terrific when he's talking to Red Tornado and Stargirl. But yeah, they're talking about the Inferno organization that were in the first issue. But that's it. There's not really much to it other than just he's there, he's listening.
Yeah, I think it's fun too that these are all essentially JSA characters too. So I feel like, where we're keeping sections throughout the Justice League Unlimited at this point. And then, Courtney, I feel like too, Stargirl kind of vouching along the lines because he was one of the returned sidekicks and stuff, right? So the fact that Wade's using that to continue this part of the story, I think is smart.
Yeah, so we go to Wonder Woman's Mary Marvel, who go to the nest and they're trying to like think about how to destroy it. And Mary Marvel says, "Oh, I could like strike it with lightning, but that would destroy the forest." And then they both say at the same time, "We should carry it into space." And then they both have like an awkward like moment of, that was weird. And it's like, well, we're both speaking from the wisdom of various gods here. Maybe they're not so different. So we get a whole big thing here where they're flying up the ground all these eggs are on into the upper air, but then a giant parademon like comes for Mary and grabs her. So we get a bit of a fun action sequence there. I enjoyed their interactions here actually, just because since Mary Marvel is more tied to like the almost the gods of the Wonder Woman side of the universe now as opposed to what Shazam usually is. I was like, it makes sense for them to have a bit of back and forth.
And the idea that Athena and Minerva are the same, right? But one's Roman and one's Greek, and Mary's just like, but they're the same person, and Diana's like, you still have so much to learn about pantheons. I just like that. And if we can get that, Wonder Woman's kind of like Mary's almost like mentor in that way. I like that for legacy reasons. So they sail that up. Mary gets pulled down by that massive parademon. And then we get to Manhunter and Dr. Occult.
I'm going to assume that this massive parademon is the mummy parademon that's laying all the eggs, I would assume.
I would assume
I've never
so.
really thought about the reproductive cycle of a parademon before until this issue, so I'm just spitballing here.
I just thought they just came out of Apocalypse, you know?
Yeah, but those eggs are very xenomorph looking eggs with like they're just xenomorph eggs with like sort of boils on them.
Yes, they're pretty gross.
I mean, take from the best, I suppose, but worth mentioning. And then Martian Manhunter's with Dr. Occult, and they're looking for the kids. And Martian Manhunter reveals that when all the powers came back, he didn't get all of his back. He actually does not have his telepathy or any powers that are to do with his eyes. He still has flight and strength, and he still has shapeshifting, but he doesn't have some of the other ones. And it's like, okay, but he's been too scared to tell the Justice League about this thus far. So maybe there you go.
I was gonna say, Jean is always the guy that they use his telepathy for everything. So now that he doesn't have it, it would definitely, he feels like he's pretty useless, right? Because everyone else can kind of do what he can do, right? Superman has all those powers. So the fact that he's taking this so hard and he's afraid,
which is kind of silly though, right? Because like, you still have super strength. You can still shapeshift. I mean, shapeshifting's pretty useful here. That's a very useful skill.
Yeah, but you feel like that's his defining thing, right? Is his telepathy. So the fact that he's taking this so hard and he's afraid to tell them, so he's just been kind of going, which again puts them at risk now too. Yeah. Because if they're counting on his telepathy for all this type of stuff, then yeah. But yeah, so I love this little character beat here between the two of them, and the fact that Dr. Occult figured out kind of who Martian Manhunter was because of the tie to, his appearance with the doctor that had the heart attack, and he investigated that because it was something that was weird. So again, I love these little, history beats that Waid throws in there.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever read like the story of how Martian Manhunter originally came to Earth. So like having little teases of like that origin story was kind of obviously. You hear a lot about obviously his time on Mars and the Warring Martians and all that. I feel like I've never really read the story of no. This is how he actually arrived on Earth and those first experiences he had.
Have you not read New Frontier?
Oh no, I haven't actually.
Okay, so
I saw the animated movie once. I never read the book though.
So that's where I see it from. Is I've read it in New Frontier,
but that's not. I mean, obviously that's its own like separate thing because it's this like I don't know if I've ever read an in continuity take on it. I guess. Gotcha. But anyway, so Mary Marvel uses her lightning to strike down the big parademon. It turns out Black Lightning was helping as well with some extra voltage. So, they have that. Whereas Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult find a parademon who can speak. It's not just a mindless thing. And there's some of these, and he says, I was one of the first that was given sentience and intelligence so that I could kind of run things down here. And they're very, very upset. Because he's like, oh yeah, Darkseid's going to be so pleased when I come home and tell him that I've grew our legions down here and I've done this and that. I've got a bunch of like warriors because that's what they're going to use to kidnap children for, is to turn them into warriors, which makes sense because that's what Darkseid does with like Mr. Miracle and stuff like that. Yeah,
that's Granny Goodness's thing.
Yeah. So Martian Manhunter's like, hey, Darkseid died, bro. And he's like, no! What's so funny is he believes it instantly. He doesn't even like doubt it for a second. He just immediately goes, no, my Darkseid!
Yeah, it shows that kind of how mindless in devotion the parademons are.
And he's like, no, it's not fair. Yada yada. So yeah, he attacks Jean. Jean fights back. And the big plot point here really is that Jean shapeshifts into the parademon so he looks right back at himself. And then starts beating the shit out of him, and he's basically just punching him to death until the lasso comes in and like grabs his arm back. And Superman and Diana are like, "Hey, this isn't you, Jean. We have to have a talk in the Watchtower about this." And Jean flies off, invisible, to get away from them. And I actually really like the final panel where he just seems to be in like the Arctic or something. And you can just kind of see the vague shape of him because the snow's hitting his invisible self. That's a really cool visual.
Yeah.
He just looks sad. He's just sort of depressed. And it's like, because it feels like he's not just sad about losing his powers. There's something more to this, surely. Because he feels like he's really... The fact that he's getting so angry that he's almost... I know it's a parademon, but the fact that he's like letting violence kind of like dictate what he's doing feels very like a big deal here. So I really appreciate that we're getting some character beats and development for characters that don't normally have their own book. We're getting some development for J'onn J'onzz. and maybe we can get like a cool Martian Manhunter arc out of this, where I think that's cool. We get to focus on some other characters, which is the appeal of having a book where it can literally be anyone in the DCU that's in the Justice League.
And so what I like here too is that Superman's saying that Colt told us what John told him, and that why he would hide it, I'm not sure, but there's something wrong with our friend, and we need to figure it out. Something bad. So I like that too. That's the approach that Superman's going at it from. It's like, let's figure this out because he's our friend, and not just he's a piece of this team, that we need right. Is that he's in pain? We need to figure out why.
Yeah, and that last panel really sells it. Like, I think it's really weird, and maybe this is a reason why an artist shouldn't be doing 2 books in a month. But this art in this book is much, much nicer than the other Dan Mora book. And again, part of it might just be the coloring, because we maybe theorized that's what the main problem was. But everything about this, like Martian Manhunter and Dr. Occult going into the cave, which is dark, but Occult's lighting up with this rune that he's got that's making everything bright. Like, just that contrast between the darkness and the bright is really good there.
And it's very noirish, right? The way that's playing with the shadows, and just both of these characters, right? Martian Manhunter's usually a detective, and you have Dr. Occult who's a detective. So, we're really edging towards the strengths of those characters. And just Moore's killing it on here. So to read Superman and then this back to back, I got a little bit of whiplash.
Yeah, just like the moments between Mary and Wonder Woman were pretty cool. I think the ending with Martian Manhunter in the snow is really just a great visual and really sells this idea that even though he's on his own, he's still staying invisible, so he can't be seen, even though he doesn't need to be. Just sort of says so much about what he's feeling right now. So there's like stuff that's being implied, and definitely so far we're only 2 issues in, but this definitely feels like it's got a lot more of a focus and like more of like a sort of like main story that's going for, versus those other Waid books where it feels like he was just, I mean, World's Finest is ongoing, his action arc just ended, but with World's Finest especially, it feels like he's just kind of there to have fun, and nothing ever feels like it really matters that much. Whereas this, it feels like there's a direction in mind, and I think it's this thing that's been missing from World's Finest that has become more clear now that we're like 30 plus issues into that, and it's like we kept this is a fun arc, and we'll get to like a proper story after, but he's still just doing fun arcs and one shots and just playing with things. And I don't know if you've read World's Finest from last week yet, but it wasn't.
I did.
Yeah, it wasn't that good. It was like it should have fine. It should have been better.
Yeah,
it should have been better. So, yeah, very good. What are you giving Justice League Unlimited issue 2?
I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Yeah, I think I probably agree with that, actually. Yeah, not quite the 9, but I think stronger than the 8 for the character beats, and particularly like the development that we get with Jean towards the end, I think is actually very intriguing. So credit to the book for like giving us some more interesting focused stuff, yet somehow not really addressing the cliffhanger from the last issue. That's just sort of there to linger now, and we always know that Airwave's up to something whenever he's about. But yeah, so far so good. Black Canary, Best of the Best, issue 2. Tom King writing with Ryan Sook on the art. So, yes, last week I had to do 2 Tom King books with Connor just sitting there making faces at anything I said. Not that I was like amazingly. I mean, I thought Jay Sparks was solid enough, but Wonder Woman last week was it was a chef's kiss of a book.
So good.
Yeah. So, and I'm happy to say I really liked this Black Canary issue as well. We were super right at the first one, of course.
I'm still not a fan of Tom King's take on commentary over a fight, because it's very, very, very wordy.
The funny thing is though with that, if you really want to, you could just kind of skip the commentary and it wouldn't really like affect your understanding of the story.
Yeah, if I'm Sook, I'm gonna talk to him and go like, "Hey man, can we maybe cut some of this because it's getting in the way of the art." The old Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo back and forth. Because as someone that watches a lot of wrestling and fighting and that kind of stuff, there's kind of a less is more when it comes to commentary. And if I'm watching this fight and if I'm hyped for Canary and Shiva, and the amount of talking these two dudes are doing over it, it's a lot.
They're trying to get themselves over.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, once again, we get round 2 of the fight here. Like the first issue was round 1, and we get flashbacks throughout. We have 2 sets of flashbacks here that kind of like, you know, we sort of rotate through. One of which is like the training that Dinah was doing with her mother. And then the other one being when she was a kid and her mother was the active Black Canary, and her like waiting up late and worrying about her mom, and we'll get into kind of where that goes. But that stuff is really good. Her training methods are very harsh, where she has her dive into like the ocean with a cinder block at the start of the issue, and then makes her swim around an island holding the cinder block, and the cinder block's never allowed to go in the water, or so I think that's what they're going for. It's like, hey, we'll do just 1 or 2 laps around the island, but I want to double that by the end of the week. And that's like a whole thing that we get throughout the issue. And then when they're done with that, she's like, okay, we're going to go home and I'll make you breakfast, but you have to like run behind the car. So I'll keep it at 20 miles an hour, but by the end of the week, we're going to 25.
She's a maniac. The Black Canary mom is a maniac. There's and I understand this is a world that superheroes exist and this, that, and the other. But good Lord, just the cinder block and treading water. Like, I don't know if you've ever tried to tread water, let alone holding something over your head. Good Lord. And then she has her swim and then run, and, you know, yeah. So it definitely goes to show the type of fight that she thinks that Dinah's going to be in for, right? Because they really stress, like, yes, Shiva's the best fighter and striker, this, that, and the other. This fight's going to be one on conditioning, you know? And so I definitely like seeing that aspect play out here.
Yeah, and then they sort of established that this has been a whole life thing. Like when Dinah's a kid, like she's told to exercise every night. Like like even if your dad says you don't have to, do your 100 push-ups, your 100 whatever. Like they really sort of sell this idea that she's been kind of putting her through this entire life. You know, and we get the classic Black Canary like outfit on Dinah Drake in the flashback, and young Dinah, saying it's not fair that she gets to go out and she can't come and watch or be a hero and all that. And then of course this idea that, hey, there's a risk later on that she might be hurt because they hear on the news, oh, Black Canary stopped a bank robbery, but she might get injured on the way out. And sure enough, yeah, she's like lying with a bullet wound or whatever it is in the front room, and she's scared, and they get angry when they catch her watching because she's not meant to see this because it'll scare her. So you really got this sense of this like forbidden thing that's been kept away from her. But one of the details that I really liked is that as soon as Dinah Drake leaves the apartment, young Dinah just turns around and starts doing push-ups. Like she takes this advice and like sort of sticks to what she's been told to do because she wants to be like her mum. Like she's fighting for her mum the entire time. And this is all playing out, of course, as the the boxing match, or as I say boxing, it's more of a MMA fight or whatever. But
yeah, it's MMA meets wrestling type deal.
Yeah. But Dinah's doing a kip up. She's fighting back. She's getting the shit kicked out of her for most of it. To be honest, that has been the whole thing. Yeah,
I was gonna say, it seems like though the story that if you do read all of the boxes like I did,
yes,
it definitely feels like they're hinting at like a rope-a-dope where Dinah's trying to have Shiva punch herself out. So then later it's gonna have some, but Dinah's also catching a beating at the same time, which when you're doing a rope-a-dope, you're not supposed to. So there's that part of the story as well. So I feel like there's a story being told on multiple levels here, and King really is excelling there.
Yeah, and they do this thing as well where like Dinah's getting the shit kicked out of her. She's able to fight back, and the commentators even say she shouldn't be doing that. She's trying to tire out Shiva. She shouldn't be wasting all of her energy trying to like fight her just now. But what I really liked is the moment where like she really gets the shit beat out of her after that, where like it swings back and Shiva's like basically won and got her down. That happens as we're getting the flashback, where after training, her mum's going to give her like physical therapy, right? She's doing the massage and whatever, and it's right at that moment where like she just stops responding, and like Dinah like sits up to see where she is, and her mum's collapsed on the floor, and then the very next page is Dinah in the middle of the ring with Shiva standing over her, and it looks like it's over. It looks like this is it. So it mirrors kind of the darkest moment of the training with like her being down and out in the ring, and everyone's saying it's over. But of course Dinah like crawls to the ropes and stands up, but
and pulls herself up.
Yeah. Although Shiva spits in her face first, just to add the insult.
That's a bigger You know, her pulling herself up on the rope is very much in professional wrestling. There's like a last man standing match where they're kind of the boringest to watch, right? Because you can only win by keeping your opponent down for a 10 count. So it's a lot of this fighting, and then when one's on the ground, this very slow count to 10, and you'll see the opponent pull themselves up on the rope in this way, and it was very reminiscent of that. So skill, shouts to King and Sook for executing that on the page.
Yeah, and this is where as her mother's bleeding out and try to patch herself up with the husband in the front room, she picks up her blonde wig and holds it in her bed, and this is the sort of thing where if this was the ending of a movie, this would be terrible. Because this would be Shia LaBeouf picking up the indie hat at the end of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and we all groan at the obvious bait. But this is not that, because we are, Dinah was always destined to become the next Black Canary, and she idolizes her mother. So this is this very sweet thing of her putting the wig on and seeing how she looks with it, and looking in the mirror. This idolization of her that she's always had from a young age. And what's really nice about this is that at least at the very final page, and we praised the first issue for adding this wrench at the very end of the issue, where it was Dinah has agreed to go down in the fight. The fight is fixed. She's agreed to go down so that she can save her mum. She'll get paid for going down in round 6, and that will let her get the money to give this top of the line treatment to save her mum. The end of this issue takes that and puts it in doubt in a beautiful way, where after her mum's collapsed, Dinah's feeding her some soup or whatever, and Dinah's mum says, look, this thing's going to take me soon, and there's only one thing I want before I die. I want you to win. So the end of the second issue gives Dinah an emotional reason to not want to throw the fight. So we actually don't know, at this point in the story now, we don't know if she's going to throw the fight or she's going to actually try and win the fight at the end. We don't know.
And the way that they're framed across from the person that's doing the asking too. Yeah. They're rhymes of each other. So just, it's so good.
Yeah, it's
so good.
It was such a surprise to hear Dinah say she was going to throw the fight at the end of the first issue. And in this issue, and I wasn't thinking it at the time, but I was throughout this issue thinking, well, we know she's going to throw it later. Now, obviously, there's the drama of can she even make it to round 6, but maybe it takes some of the stakes away. But now that they've thrown this wrinkle in of no, her mum's dying wish is to win the fight effectively. Can she does she go against her mother in some attempt to save her, even if her mother might not want that? Her mother might have accepted, I've had my time, death's on its way, all I want is for you to win. Does she ignore what her mother's wishes are to try and save her, or does she give her mother what she wants because she respects her so much? It's actually a genuinely intriguing conundrum that we're now in with the character, where we don't know. And even if she makes it to round 6, what if she gets to round 6 and she loses, but it wasn't because she did it intentionally? What if she just loses?
She can't keep going. Yeah. You know what I mean? But again, I feel like that's the story that they're telling, is the conditioning, right? She's got the heart, right? This is Mickey and Rock, and you know what I mean? She's got that will, the eye of the tiger type deal, and she's going to pull that from her mom. So I can see both scenarios play out.
Yeah. Honestly, I did not expect them to hit me with arguably an even better end of issue reveal that recontextualized what was going on in the fight. If they can somehow pull this off at the end of every issue, I will be very impressed, because I don't know what else they could add into this now.
Yeah.
But the fight now has even more stakes and more intrigue than it ever did in issue. And I loved issue 1, but I think the ending of this made it even better, because now I'm like, oh, is she trying to win? I don't actually know.
Yeah, because everything that she does, it seems like, oh, we know she's just delaying the fight till a certain point where then she can get the money. Well, it's like, well, now wait, does she keep getting up because she wants to make her mom proud? Or is she getting up because she wants to save her? There's so many different variables at play during this fight that we really don't know how it's going to go.
And it's entirely possible, and even lately perhaps, that she's not decided yet. She might be in this fight trying to make it to round 6, and she's like, she won't make the decision until she's in round 6. Do I go for the kill, figuratively speaking, or do I throw the fight? She might not have decided. She might be pulled in both directions and is weighing that decision. in the ring as she's trying to survive against Shiva. So, yeah, this is fantastic.
Good stuff.
It's arguably better than issue 1. The only real critique is that maybe some of the commentary from the commentators in the fight is a bit excessive and doesn't really need to be there.
Yeah, but you ignore all that and you look at the beats with her and her mom, and then the little kid stuff too. When she puts on that wig, you know, I had a smile because I was like, oh shoot, this is like where she made the decision. I want to be like my mom.
Yeah.
Despite everything that she's going through, right? She knows the dangers. She understands that, right? The mom might not come home, and now she's still making the decision. I want to be like her. So yeah, just again hitting on those emotional beats. Tom King so far in this book, he's 2 for 2.
Could Dinah argue with her mother? Let's say later in the story, in the flashbacks, Dinah reveals what she's going to do to her, and they have an argument about it. Could Dinah argue that her mother's given up? And maybe her mother could throw that back in her face by saying, well, you're going to give up in the fight. You're not supposed to quit fighting. You're supposed to fight to win. And then she could be like, well, you should fight to win. You should fight to live. You know, there could be that debate at some point, potentially.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a lot of good stuff here. So, yeah, excellent. What are you giving Black Canary best of the best issue 2?
I'm going to give it a 9.
Yeah, I think it's a 9. It's arguably a 9.5. I might ding it just slightly for the commentary being a bit too excessive from the boxing match or the fighting match, but yeah, excellent stuff. No, this is pretty top tier.
All I know is I want Dinah to hit a V trigger at some point.
I don't know if you're going to get a V trigger, but
I just wanted to line her up. Hit the, you know.
I think you may get some sort of like suplex at some point, maybe.
Well, we did get some of that in the last one, you know. But yeah, I want to see a lined up V trigger. Ryan Sook, if you're listening, you know, let's give me what I want.
You may get like some sort of head scissors or Hurricane Rana at some point if you're lucky as well.
Well, I'm just saying a V trigger because it does in a fighting ring, right? A flying knee of that kind can't exist. You know, more so. I'm not gonna want a one-winged angel. You know, although no one kicks out of the one-winged angel, so should go for that immediately.
Yeah, but they're not doing pinfalls though.
No, I know. I was just saying that it's a very protective move.
Yeah, it's knockout or surrender only. It's like War Games rules, but at the cage.
Yes. At the cage without waiting 20 minutes to get the match actually going. I love a good War Games match, but man, that is always a thing. Yeah. But this thing doesn't actually get going until 25 minutes in.
All right. Metamorpho, the Element Man, issue 1, Al Ewing and Steve Lieber on art. So when I went to like go to this, and I thought to myself, should I maybe just not read this? Maybe this is something I don't have to read. But then I looked at who was writing it and I went, oh no, it's Al Ewing. I have to give it a try. So yes, lo and behold, here we are. Metamorpho.
This feels, between the Lieber art and the way that Ewing is writing it, this feels like a lost 70s comic. Yeah, and I love it for that.
Yeah, they're going for a super old school feel, but down to the character like profile images with the little descriptions on the first page, and even the first page, I would argue, is basically what an old front cover would be. It's like, you know, because you'd have front covers back in those days where you'd get a little bit of like speech bubbles, and it would be like a moment from later in the story, because we don't start the story here where this like this first page is. This is a tease of what happens once the villain's actually there and fighting. This 3 match Mr. 3. And he works for a group called Cyclops, which is an acronym for something.
We don't know yet. Although it looks like the CY are together. It's like CY is like the first word, and then the rest are all just one letter each. Yes.
I mean, I may have read that and went, wait, from the X-Men? Why is he wanting to terrorize Metamorpho? What's going on? Yeah. So yeah, fun stuff. But yeah, so the story here is this Mr. 3 guy sneaking into Stag Industries and coming after to find out more about Metamorpho. And Metamorpho is a little surprise here, where he's actually like already there. He basically transformed into like another layer of glass on the big computer screen, so that he's just there, and he actually responds to the villain when he says something. He says, "Yeah, Do tell, Mystery Man. And he's like, wait, what? And then Metamorpho comes out of the screen, kind of, because he was a layer on top of it.
Look, I'm going to admit this. I don't exactly understand how Metamorpho's powers work, but that's okay. Because here, we're just using it to, not drive the story forward, but if he needs to turn into an element, because I thought he only becomes elements in the human body, right? Well, not every element he turns into is in the human body, so.
No, I think I've definitely seen him turn into, like, lead before.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, like, here he can assume forms of elements, and that's where we go.
I think bizarrely, the thing that throws me off about his powers is that I forget that he can kind of change shape, because I always feel like I usually see him when he turns into like a rock or something. It tends to be like his arm turns into a rock, but it's not like this idea that he can actually do like a T-1000 style, like I'll flatten myself into like a sheet of glass.
Yes,
that's something that I don't think of Metamorpho doing. I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm sure he's done it in the past, but it's definitely not something that I would have thought of immediately for him. But it was a fun moment, so I'm not complaining. And I will
exactly. I'm not, again, just because I don't understand it doesn't mean I can't enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, very, very, kind of silly stuff here. And turns out that Mr. 3 can emit that energy that turned Metamorpho into Metamorpho, and it inerts his powers.
Yes.
So he can't do anything.
It's the Orb of Ra. It's basically the light from the Orb of Ra that we're talking about here. And so in walks Java, Stag, and Sapphire, and they're like, no, someone help him! Like, actually, probably the thing that threw me off most about this issue is that Simon Stagg seems to be kind of pro Metamorpho, at least in the small little moments that he has. He doesn't have a lot of dialogue in this issue, admittedly, but they send in Java to try and help him, and then Simon Stagg whips out his own Orb of Ra from a suitcase, looking very happy about it, might I say. And uses it to like break the cooling pipe for all the computery stuff in the building. So basically this liquid nitrogen style stuff comes out, and he sort of pours it all over Mr. 3 here, and he runs off. So yeah, anyway.
This book's gonna make me like Java as well, because he is he mutters to himself all for everything, that like nobody loves Java. Sure, let the Neanderthal get it. And they're so mean to him, yet he still does what he needs to do. Yeah. Because he has this undying love for Sapphire. It's so funny.
He also at one point like sort of mutters to himself that my people started fire. Like
he says, when I discovered fire, you didn't hear me asking for congratulations. It's just like, oh my God. Or that he says a lot of the stuff that decorates Stag's office was, from Java's culture. And he goes, yeah, the culture that I am thought, you're lucky to be here because of me. You're just like, man, Stag.
I think the thing that sticks out to me about this is it was such a nice like change of tone and pace from everything else I was reading, because it's so light but not in like a. This didn't feel fluffy to me. This felt like we were actually sort of like building the characters here, especially when when the character profiles were on the first page, they kind of comically didn't actually explain who any of them were. No. And so I saw the name Urania and went, who the hell is this? So later on in the issue, when she shows up, and it's basically a Lady Metamorpho, right? It's Element Gal, as she calls herself. And she's super into Metamorpho. She wants him. She's like flirting. She's going for it. And when he mentions like, no, I'm a one-woman element man, and she's like, oh, you mean that Sapphire Stag? That's star of screens, whatever. And she sort of wraps herself around him, and she's clearly going for it. Like it's kind of funny, particularly when like Sapphire shows up a little bit later, and there's a little bit of a get away from my territory kind of vibe coming from them. I was having some fun with that, the character dynamics, especially since I had no idea what personality Element Gal had. I don't remember ever reading anything from her.
So I remembered Element Woman from Johns' Justice League in the New 52, but she was different. She wasn't the same as Metamorpho. That's different than here. So just the idea that she works for Shade, which that's Frankenstein's organization, right? So she kind of works on the weird stuff as well. So that automatically got me to understand kind of who this character is. And
it ties a little bit into this Mr. 3, because he worked on Shade as well at one point or something.
Well, maybe they don't know who he is because he can turn into the three forms of matter. because she says that, that wouldn't be him, I would know about that, so it could be him. That's who Rex at least thinks it is.
Yeah. Anyway, so they do a bit of theorizing. They go looking for him and they find him, and he hits them with more orb of Ra light. And,
orb of Ra.
They're kind of melting. They're freaking out. They're turning into whatever. But Rex has got a plan. He gets the cables from the big fuse box or whatever, and he's like, hey, there's a fourth state of matter. He says he can turn into a liquid version of himself, a gas version, or a solid version, but there's also plasma, which he can create with electricity, and he kind of blasts them with a bunch of lightning or electricity to turn it into plasma, which kind of messes with them, and he kind of collapses. So
we get a little bit sciencey too, because he explains, he has Element Girl turned into copper, so they can, with enough gas and energy through this, so that's what transfers it into plasma. So again, it felt like the spirit of the character, from far as I know. So but pretty fun, silly stuff.
Yeah, it was a fun solution to the problem. Yeah, so there's some more payoff here. Sapphire runs in and sort of tells Element Gal to get away from Rex. But basically there's some sort of thing going on here. The Project Sunrise is what Mr. 3 was trying to accomplish. And apparently whatever this is, they don't know what it is, but it's supposed to start with the death of Metamorpho, and that's kind of the cliffhanger here at the end.
Yeah, because also at the beginning, there's a guy named, who was this? Prince Rahman, and he defeats somebody named Helios, and turns the sun into like this gem, this six-sided gem sun, and it has nothing to do with anything as far as we know.
Yeah, I assumed,
except for taking place at the pyramids.
Yeah, and that ties into the backstory, because like the asteroid or the meteor that gave Rex his powers was tied to Egypt, and I just read issues about that back in Batman and the Outsiders not too long ago. So I'm assuming it's tied to kind of the history of the meteor, that stuff. But we'll see where they go with that. It says next time the woman from yesterday, so maybe we'll get some elaboration on that. But that's just a fun read though. It was very kind of old school and pulpy. Rex is a fairly fun character when he's written well, and I think having Java basically be Ray's brother from Everybody Loves Raymond, being miserable that everyone loves Rex, is quite funny.
It's my favorite thing. I love it. So funny.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like the actual plot with like, oh, who's Mr. 3 working for and what they're up to is that interesting yet, but
no,
that's not the part that was making it fun for me to read.
But just the idea that he's working with some group called Cyclops, and there's this Prince Rahman, and it seems like we're just gonna do kind of this old style comic book storytelling where we're just gonna kind of drop you into the middle of things and have you figure it as you go. And again, I trust Al Ewing in that. I will say that the art from Lieber was a little bit dialed back from what I remember in the Jimmy Olsen book. But maybe we'll get a little bit more silly as it goes. But just all of his expressions from Java to Rex to Sapphire, everything really hits. I was just expecting a bit more silly, but it still works.
I mean, I think it's going for an old school vibe, and I think art back in the day was a little more, like, even if the storylines were more silly, the art tended to be a bit more subdued. And I think maybe that's the vibe they're going for. Maybe they'll do more wacky stuff as it gets going, but I think the art's really solid though, and it adds to the vibe they're going for the book. What are you giving Metamorpho, the Element Man issue 1?
I'm gonna give this 7.5.
Yeah, I think it's like a solid 7 right now. And I'm down to read more of it. I think it's a fun change of pace. And the fact that I'm wanting to read more despite how busy it is with books right now is a sign that I'm into it. So cool. Batman, The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween, issue 4, Jeph Loeb writing with Cliff Chiang on the art. So this issue is quite focused actually, which I really appreciated, which is that Batman, in the altercation that he was having at the end of the last issue, takes a bit of a beating. We don't really get to see a whole bunch of it, right? We see him get away, but the story really starts when the Batmobile comes crashing into the Batcave on autopilot. Dick has to sort of throw Alfred out the way to make sure he's okay. But Batman's basically on his deathbed. He's dying. And they have to pull him out. Alfred has to start doing surgery to make him, better. Take the bullet out, all the stuff. And the entire time Dick's narrating this issue, it's all his narration boxes where he's thinking about when his parents died and this guilt that he has over that, he was always supposed to check the lines before each show, and he genuinely can't remember if he did it the night his parents died, and he's comparing Batman possibly dying to his parents, like this idea that this is happening again, that he's going to lose his parental figure. So I really like this, especially where it went, where Alfred's done everything he can with his medical military training. He's patched him up. He's patched up the wounds. He's got the bullet out. And he's like, now we just have to wait. Now it's up to Bruce. Now he has to have the will to live. And Dick can't accept that there's no simple solution to that it's taking time. So Dick comes up with some sort of solution. He wants Batman to have the will to live. So he goes to Arkham in the Batmobile. He gets the autopilot to take him there. And he goes to speak to Calendar Man. But he's not actually there to see Calendar Man. He's just there to lure out Catwoman. Because the last time he was here, Catwoman came out to stop him from doing this. And he's like, yes, this is perfect. This is what I wanted. And he basically gasses her with something so that he knocks her out, and he carries her out of Arkham. So this is actually quite a sweet story where Dick, as a child, kidnaps Catwoman, brings her back to the Batcave so that she can be by Batman's bedside to maybe give him the will to live. And she kisses Batman on the mouth when he's lying there, and he wakes up.
And I love that Dick asks her, what did you do? She goes, I gave him one of my lives.
Yeah, that was a sweet line. Yeah,
that was such a good one. And the whole running theme underneath that is Dick telling the story about his dad before every performance, especially on Christmas where they would do 2 performances, to check the lines, right? To make sure everything's working, and we do this before and after, but Dick never liked the tone his dad gave to him because it wasn't the happy-go-lucky kind of version of his dad. It was strictly business, and he sees a lot of that in Bruce, right?
Oh no, Alfred here specifically.
And Alfred,
because he talks about how Alfred, he's never had that tone before, but when he starts saying do this, do that, don't ask questions, he's like, this reminds me of my father talking about checking the lines.
Yes, and so there's just that undercurrent too about working, the whole death-defying aspect, yet the fact that his parents died, and what working without the net means, and that's his entire life now. We have to do things this way, and using the Batman being incapacitated to tell whatever's going on through Dick's viewpoint. Very smart on Loeb's part.
Yeah, it's a really good perspective to take, and that's specifically about working without a net. He kind of says towards the end that even when you don't have a net, you have to believe there's a net. And I think that's what he's doing. He's finding the safety net. He's finding Catwoman to come and bring Bruce back. It's actually a really sweet story, and it shows that this young version of Dick is observant, that he's realized the connection that Catwoman and Batman have. He's using that, and he's maybe acknowledge it in a way that even Batman and Catwoman are refusing to admit right now by saying, hey, she means something to him. This is important. So it's actually kind of sweet from a Catwoman and Batman relationship perspective, but it's also sweet from Dick noticing this. I don't know, it's all really good. Elsewhere though, Solomon Grundy wakes up out of the water, smashes a boat up, goes to the prison and breaks out Gilda Den, and basically just jumps off with her like Hulk. Although he smashes the bat signal on his way. They go up to the roof and smash that, and then they jump off. So it doesn't answer too much, but Gilda thinks that Harvey might have sent him. So we're still kind of obscuring, is Harvey still alive? What's going on there? So we're teasing that. But the whole waiting for Batman to wake up was a multi-day thing, because we actually start the story on Christmas Eve and it ends on January 1st. So
right, on New Year's.
Yeah, so we've actually bridged the 2 holidays there with this issue. So cool, very cool. Yeah, and
Cliff Shane really knows how to draw Catwoman.
Oh, for sure, right? Yeah.
So all of that stuff I think is handled really well. I mean, the art throughout is fantastic. Yeah, especially those Catwoman pages really sing.
Yeah, I'm always a fan of Catwoman with the long gloves and the long boots. So I do like this outfit on her. Although I do even like it more when her hair's out. I think that looks really cool. That 90s, early 90s, late 80s kind of Catwoman look. But, you know, like the panel or the page even, the full page spread of when he says that you have to find, you know, like, he's, you know, that's too reckless for him, but tonight I saved Batman's life without a net, and that's the full page is him hugging Batman now standing on his feet. You know, it's like, it's really showing, it's really interesting that we've got this and Batman and Robin Year One both at the same time, kind of doing different elements of the early Dick Grayson Batman relationship. Very, very sweet stuff. And Batman, before he leaves to go out looking for whatever, actually goes up to say thank you to Alfred, which is also kind of sweet. It's a very sweet issue in a lot of ways. It's good stuff. So yeah, Batman takes Catwoman back to Arkham, and the cliffhanger is that all the villains have escaped from Arkham, but in Joker's standing there wearing Mad Hatter's hat and holding Riddler's staff. And I assume that's meant to be Mr. Freeze's gun. It's quite small for Mr. Freeze's gun, but I think that's what it's meant to be.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Yeah. So, and I assume that wreath is maybe a Poison Ivy thing as well, actually, that he's got around his neck. So, yeah. Yeah,
not good.
Yeah, not good. But I mean, obviously, like these long Halloween stories have always had like a lot of villains popping in throughout. So yeah, but we're going to get Joker at some point. Here he is.
Yes.
So yeah,
the wreath. I'm going back and looking. I think the wreath is Ivy.
Yeah.
But yeah,
he's got Catwoman's whip
too.
Yeah. I'll just notice that. Yeah, and also apparently he's into Pokemon because he says he's got to catch them all, and then he laughs.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, sure. Obviously, he's talking about all the different villain stuff, but still.
Yes.
I've never been into Pokemon. I've never played a Pokemon game. I've never watched an episode of Pokemon. And yeah, I hear I got to catch them all, and it's what I think of, because that phrase was just ingrained into the branding, yeah. So,
branding.
No, I really liked this issue. I thought this was a really sweet Batman and Robin issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well. Okay. We can just read it then. I don't know. I thought you may have something else that you wanted to add. Cliff Chiang's art's very good. Obviously, you mentioned Catwoman specifically, but just in general, you know, obviously having a different artist for each issue is definitely making it a very, you know, back and forward book, depending on how much you like the art. But I do think Cliff Chiang does complement the overall style that these books typically go for. He seems like a fine choice, whereas maybe the last one was... I think the last issue was probably the weakest choice. Not necessarily because it was the worst art, but just because it didn't feel like it fit the overall book that much.
The aesthetic.
Yeah. But, no, very, very delightful, heartfelt issue, I thought. So, what were you giving last Halloween issue 4?
I'm going to give this a straight 8.
Yeah, I gotta go 9 on this. I don't know. I thought it was quite touching. I think it's up there for me this week. So, there you go. Green Lantern Dark issue 2. Tate Brombal writing with Werther Dell'Edera on the art. So, yeah, the first issue of this was really good. And I remember thinking at the time, it's kind of weird that it's not a one-shot, because it felt like it kind of ended. Like, I felt like it was a fully self-contained story. But this did take things forward. It further elaborated on how the world went dark in the first place, because we're in this sort of post-apocalyptic world that is not eternally dark, because there is still a daytime period, but it's much shrouded in darkness.
And it's cleaved parts of the world apart from each other. So now New England's an island.
Yes. And they talk about how when this all started, it was necrospores that came down. Which they then elaborate as eclipso crystals, so there might be an eclipso element to this.
And obsidian seeds on top of that too. So
yeah, a whole bunch of stuff. But they mentioned that there was giant sinkholes that consumed entire cities, and like you say, cut off parts of the country. But this issue, there's a tease here of this monster coming to like kidnap a kid at the start in a different town nearby. But in Lantern's Light, where the Green Lantern sort of saved everyone last time from Grundy and the zombies. Now we have the kid, Letty? Is that her name? No, Lunette.
Lunette.
Okay, there you go. That's what I was thinking of. She's like, hey, is today the day you're going to come out and we're going to go save somewhere else? And basically the Green Lantern is just like, no, I'm just going to get drunk. I'm not going to talk to anyone. Leave me alone. So Lynette's kind of like struggling with like this idealism that she has for her. Like, is she not as great a person or a hero that she thought? But the story really gets going when this woman and a few others come in begging for help, looking for the Green Lantern, because they've heard tales of the Green Lantern saving this town. And they've got a problem where they've got a monster in their town that kidnaps children after dark. But it's starting to get worse where it's like breaking into homes. Like, it used to be fine as long as you were home when night fell, it would leave you alone. It was like a deal they had with the monster. But now it's taking kids anyway. So that this woman has a baby on her back, but has lost her son. That's the son that went, missing at the start of the issue. And that's when our Green Lantern comes in and doesn't really want to get involved, is trying to get out of it. But Lynette makes a bit of a speech. The mother makes a bit of a speech. And ultimately, she eventually just goes, fine, I'll go save the other town tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lynette's been pushing we need to go do more. We need to do more. And you definitely get this sense of almost anxiety out of Green Lantern. Like, no, I already did too much.
Yeah,
I'm not trying to.
Yeah, there's a great sense of reluctance, right? Like this pressure to be a hero is not something she wants in any way, shape, or form. And hearing that this other town's been painting a Green Lantern symbol on their doors in the hopes that Green Lantern will come and save them is not. It's not encouraging her. It's not making her feel like,
no.
How can she possibly live up to this?
Yes, it's the pressure. I can't deal with the pressure. But they go, and I think it's curious too that it's called New Camelot. Now I don't know if this is a real place in New England, right? But I think that's not a tell of where the story's going, of course. But there's definitely some legend making here. I feel like by the end of this, we'll have the legend of Green Lantern.
It sounds made up, but I mean, it could be a real place. But it does sound on the nose enough that it's probably made up. But they travel to this town, and like we can't go into the castle looking for the monster because it's already too late. It'll be dark. We have to wait it out and do it tomorrow. So people hole up. But yeah, basically there's a lot of conflict here between the Green Lantern and Lynette. Where Lynette's like, no, we should go do it now. We have to do this. And she's like, no, stop. This is enough. We're done with this now. And I'd probably argue the best scene of the book is when the mother of the missing boy comes in and sits and has a drink with Green Lantern, and they kind of like just share who each other are, or they give each other their names. And basically when Green Lantern describes how she's feeling about all this, she just kind of laughs and says, you're talking about motherhood. You've been burdened with this kid who looks up to you, and you don't know if you can live up to her, like her dreams and hopes. You're talking about being a parent. That's what you are right now. And so she kind of laughs at kind of like how much she's dealing with this. However, Lynette overhears some of this and hears her say that she's like a burden, and is like, you think I'm a burden? Yeah, I'm not a kid. I'm not a burden. You don't have to coddle me because my mum died, which happened in the first issue. So like it's a whole big dramatic bit where she gets really mad at her, and the Green Lantern doesn't know how to like respond. She's very awkward about it. And she ends up getting mad and says, like, I know I'm not the hero you want. I know I never wanted to be a Green Lantern, right? So yeah, there's definitely some like, to go back to what the mum said, is like, yeah, this definitely sounds like a parent who's arguing with a kid who was in an accident and didn't want to be a parent.
I never wanted you either. I was like, oh man.
Yeah, super rough. And as they're having this big fight where a monster like tears the roof off the place and kidnaps Lynette, like it's our main kid is taken. So now our hero. So it's classic storytelling in a lot of ways. It's just like the reluctant hero, the character who they're trying not to bond with, they've obviously bonded with, and the fact that Lynette's believed in her is going to motivate her to go and save her. So it's typical stuff, but it's really effective because like Tate Brombal's done such a good job of making this main Lantern character, like, it's not just a refusal to answer the call. Like, every step of the way, she's not wanting to answer the call. She's not wanting to be this hero at all. But now the one person who believed in her is the one who's in trouble. So, and she feels guilty as well because of everything she just said in front of her. So, like, yeah, all the motivation is there for all of this. And then we also see Solemn Grundy wake up with like one arm crawling through wherever he died before.
Yeah.
And to a woman character. Do you have any idea who this is?
It feels like it might be Ivy.
It could be.
Because she's surrounded by plant life and yelling at Grundy, who we know is associated with plants and whatnot, and he was kind of this undead of the darkness. But she's all bathed in light, so it's almost like, what's the deal here? Like, she's definitely not part of the darkness, but they seem like they're on the same side.
Yeah, she says it's perhaps times to remove the Green Lantern from her body. I guess I never really thought of Ivy because she's wearing like an orange dress, which is just not what I think of when I think she's not dressed like Ivy normally is. No,
but but definitely there's a flower aspect. There's some hair.
Yeah, and obviously in Grundy when he's crawling in the ground, a lot of green. Like I guess you could read that as the green's popping up around him, rather than he's crawling into like a field. So that would definitely suggest Poison Ivy stuff.
Yeah. So this is the Green Lantern bit back this time and went and grew a spine. So I'm thinking Ivy, but it could literally be anything. This is a different universe, right, where things work differently. So maybe this is just that version.
I mean, it's literally labeled as an Elseworld, so they're definitely going with like full Elseworld stuff. That said, though, the more they're fleshing out the backstory of what happened and bringing up Eclipso and Obsidian and all that, it's like, okay, there's definitely a lot of things at play that are. So I'm curious to see what the backstory of the character is, because I'm sure we're going to get to that at some point before the end, and how she ended up with it.
I just looked, and only up through the 3rd issue is solicited, so I think there's only 3 issues.
That's possible. It may be 4 because it's every other month. Okay. So there may be a 4th. I think there's maybe a 4th one solicited for April.
So maybe it hasn't been solicited yet. But yeah. So
because issue 3 would be February. Issue 4 would be April, presumably. Because I don't know why I think 4, but I'm sure I heard 4 at some point.
Okay.
But
yeah. So I try to look ahead. So maybe we'll get into a little bit because it seems like there's some familiarity with Green Lantern and whoever this Ivy-esque person is. So, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I really like the oppressive feel of the world. It really felt like a hard to imagine type of post-apocalypse in that first issue, and the idea that the Lantern's light would actually bring hope to everyone. Reluctantly as it may have been, like I really like the atmosphere in that issue quite a bit, and I think this issue continues a lot of the things I liked. I like the reluctant attitude that she still has, the conflicting with the kid who idolizes her, and maybe the kind of and failing her might motivate her to become the hero that the kid wanted her to be in the first place, even if she doesn't realize it. There's some really good classic storytelling stuff going on here that I think works quite well, and even her brother trying to like sort of calm her down and not really succeeding is quite a nice little touch as well. So I've been very impressed with this so far. It's just it's a very standalone thing, obviously, but it's doing some cool stuff. And this idea, it's a really good little horror book actually. Between the zombies in the first issue and then this big monster that's coming and stealing kids in the town. There's some good horror movie style moments. So that's it's good. What are you giving Green Lantern Dark?
I'm gonna give this 8.5.
Yeah, I'm kind of around there. I think I'll agree with 8.5. I think that's a solid rating for this. All right. Batman Santa Claus Silent Night Returns issue 5. Jeph Parker writing with Lukas Ketner on the art. So how did this go, Matt?
Yeah, so this wraps everything up, and in the last issue, right? I wasn't here for that one. They go into the our heroes that have been chosen, right? So there was the 7 that showed up with the doves and whatnot. They go into the castle, into the Hollow. Where's it? I'm trying to get my page up. Into the Hollow Kingdom, and so there's all these other creatures that are fighting in the Hollow Kingdom. And our heroes are making their way through the castle, and they end up in this melancholy courtyard where it basically gives everybody like this sense of despair. So like Green Lantern goes through and he sees Oa just completely dismantled, and Superman sees Metropolis destroyed. And they do some fun coloring in the background here. So like everything green with Green Lantern, there's a sense of this greenish yellow, and the Superman, everything is blue behind him. And then it gets to Santa Claus, and you see the Rainbow Bridge collapsing with him and Krampus, and he's saying like, we made it back, don't leave us behind, and that's bathed in purples and whatnot. So it's really just this sense of despair, almost like in the never-ending story, The Swamp of Sadness. And Thunderheart sees her dad, who's been made into this, he had all the energy sucked out of him by the Hollow Knight, and sees him in that, glass, or in that amber that he got put in. And she looks at Robin, is like, you knew and you didn't let me know. So she just starts running around, and it starts to feed the Silent Knight on the outside. The other heroes, right? So Nubia and Metamorpho and Robot Man, they're all fighting these Norse creatures, and it looks like they're on the ropes. And then from the hills, the Yetis attack. And in terms of, come to find out that Mrs. Claus brought these Yetis, called out for their help, and she can speak their language. And so they start attacking, and they end up being able to turn the tide of these creatures. Once through the melancholy, right, they all kind of snap out of it. Batman helps all the heroes. And they get through, and they get to like this courtyard where there's this spring. And Zatanna and Santa Claus realize that the Fae essentially, they like to play tricks with humans. They're almost like the fifth dimensional imps. And so everything here comes with a cost, but you don't exactly realize that. So like there's, Thunderheart's thirsty, but you can't eat or drink anything in the Faelands. And so this, this flower comes out of this lagoon, or this, oasis, and tries to, force Thunderheart to drink. So Santa saves her from that. And there's a disembodied voice that, is like, well, water was requested, water was refused, your decorum is unneeded. And this gigantic frog statue comes out and essentially is like, you have to answer these riddles. And Zatanna explains that the fairies, one of their symbols were frogs for whatever reason, that when the fairies would come to Earth, they were captivated by frogs. And it leaves them with a riddle. And that riddle is, what is in the box? And as they're trying to figure,
Paltrow.
Yeah, right. At least part of her. And Thunderheart's like, how is this a riddle? But Batman figures it out that it's not a riddle. It's telling them how to stop the night. Is that essentially the suit of armor that was given to the knight, to Brian, the Hawk of Camelot? It was meant to be a gift, and it drove him crazy. And all they need to do is get the Silent Knight back into the castle. So that becomes their mission. On the outside of the castle, with the help of the Yetis, and they're able to start beating back the giants. And Mary Marvel picks up Etrigan and essentially turns him into a flamethrower, right? And starts taking him around, and him spitting hellfire. And that hellfire ends up melting the mark, right? And frees all of the creatures from the Silent Knight. They bring in the Silent Knight. They're able to conjure through Etrigan his form of Jason Blood, because he knew, right? Jason Blood knew Sir Brian that to come down and fight him, except that the armor and the shield is Metamorpho. So they end up shoving him in there, and as that happens, the gift has been returned, and everything reverts back to normal. So they get spit out of this area, and they get to celebrate Christmas up at Santa's up at the North Pole at the workshop. And Santa's telling them, you guys deserve gifts, and so he gives Batman like a bunch of drones that are shaped like bats, and he gives Superman a train watch, which just looks like a little pocket watch. And the button, he tells Superman, the button's on the side to call me if you need help. So he just gave Superman a Santa Claus signal watch. And they're like, well, we got something for you as well. And they give Santa a membership to the Justice League Unlimited.
Wait, is this maybe in continuity?
I'm taking it as it is now because it's the same card that we've seen at the beginning there.
Okay, that's weird, but all right.
Yes. So now Santa, is now a member, and he says, "Call me if you need anything." And Mrs. Claus gives him a brand new, red cape because his got destroyed in the adventure. So yeah, I would say it's not nearly as good as last year's with Compass and that story, but for a fun little follow up that might be in continuity, it's pretty good. I just the ending here, just shoving the knight back into the castle, didn't seem to live up to the threat that, he was going around like he got the Flash and he was able to weaponize Superman and all this other stuff. So, it just feels a little convenient here towards the end. But yeah, Santa getting the membership card, I thought was a fun little nice Christmas touch. And even if it's out of continuity, the sentiment still lasts that he's one of them now. They've teamed up twice. He's, Superman loves Santa just because, it's Santa Claus. And he, Superman is much a grown child, more so than Bruce is anyways. So just the fact that, they get to be teammates with him now is fun. So, the art is decent. I don't know if you said the artist's name. But it was Lukas Ketner and Michelle Bandini, and the art is balanced pretty well. Like I can't really tell where the split is, so it's handled good. The creatures look fun. Every character looks fine. It gets a little bit ropey when you start playing with all the different magic stuff. So like in the Hollow Castle, everything seems a bit ethereal, and it looks like it's just to kind of hide lack of detail in things. So that's its biggest fault. But as a whole, I'll give this a 7 out of 10.
Okay. All right. So one last thing then, everyone to Patreon, at one of the higher tiers, you can make me read a book of your choosing. Today I'm talking about Planetary issue 4. So some really cool issues of this so far, and this one also has a really cool idea. I don't know if it's my favorite necessarily. I think maybe the last couple were even more interesting, but it's still a pretty solid, cool, different tale that it starts off very separated from the group, where you don't really realize how it's going to link into them right away. Basically, like a building has like disappeared, or blown up, maybe collapsed, or sinkhole, or whatever. Like something's happened to this building. And it's the building next door where someone's like investigating what happened to it, and this guy who's like he's like the trusted liaison to some rich person. He's investigating it. He's asking questions, and then afterwards he's phoning it in and saying, "Yeah, there's nothing really to explain. There's no answers. There's very little explanation as to what's done this. The company wasn't exactly doing anything that would mean it has enemies." But as he's on the phone outside calling this in, he sees someone being mugged in an alleyway, and turns out he's a good guy because he runs over to try and save the other dude and tells him to get away. And it turns out that the guy stole the victim's medication, and it's like heart medication, which the guy feels that he needs right now. He's like, my chest is starting to rip open here. So our new hero here runs off to try and get the guy so he can get the guy's medication back. And it just so happens that the guy runs into the tarps that are over the crater where this building was. So it actually takes him straight into where this was all going on before. And when he runs in after this guy, who is there but the Planetary team? Jaquita's there, Snow's there, Drummer's there, and they're like, what's going on? And there's a bunch of guys in hazmat suits. And there's some kind of big weird artifact in the middle of the crater. So whatever caused this building to disappear, it's some kind of weird anomaly that they're investigating. And the investigator who was chasing after the bad guy jumps over the anomaly, but when he does and he makes contact with it, bunch of light happens and he teleports away, and there's just some sparkles remaining. leaving our team to be like, what the hell just happened? What went on? And we see briefly that he was teleported somewhere with all this really fancy design stuff. Like, it feels weird to just call it walls, but there's like all these big, like, big gold pillars with designs on them and like crystals and stuff. And then Drummer starts like jumping on it to be like, what the hell happened? How did he get it working? And he just keeps jumping on it like a child. And Jaquita's like, Drummer, please, don't jump on it. Why do I have to say this? What, like, he's been in Planetary for a while. I shouldn't have to say not to jump on the thing that made someone just disappear with no trace. Don't jump on it. This is stupid. But then a couple of minutes later, like as she's like making this rant, the guy teleports back and he looks kind of injured, and they're like, "Oh, geez, he's back." So yeah, he wakes up in hospital. There's actually a kind of an interesting little moment where this other character who's in hospital looks into the room. I'm not sure how this is meant to be. He's got like sort of like red hair, but he looks into the hospital room kind of like serious, and then like it's never followed up on. So I'm wondering if that's like a tease for something that's coming later. But yeah, basically the guy wakes up and they're like, hey, we investigate this stuff. We're kind of building a map, try to understand all these things. Can you help us? Do you know where you went? And the guy's like, yeah, I was gone for a while. Here's what happened. So we actually get, like, through him telling the story, where this place was and what's going on. Turns out that he was teleported into the middle of a spaceship. And this spaceship was a ship that was built to travel through the bleed between universes, different Earths, different places in the multiverse. And this ship crash landed a long time ago. The AI on board's what's talking to him and telling him all this, and shows him the snowflake map to the multiverse and everything that exists, and explains that it crash landed a long time ago, and we get this full page spread of the ship crashing on Earth when there's dinosaurs there, right? The entire crew of this ship died, and this ship has been here, and Earth is like, went around it. It's like deep below the ground now in present day, and it sent out these monolith style things to hopefully teleport people back to it so that people could discover it's there and it could get out. And it wants this guy's help to get home. Like, can you like help me get home? And that's kind of the mission that's given to him. So it turns out that this ship has modified this guy on a genetic level of somewhat. And he's like, so we come back to him telling the story, and he's like, hey, do you want to see it? And Jaquita's like, yeah, very much. Like, we always see the aftermath of these weird things. We very rarely get to see the actual stuff. So he kind of like transforms with whatever the ship's done to him into like this kind of almost technomancer kind of looking thing, where there's like sort of bits of circuitry on his face, but he's got a big gold cape and whatnot. He's got all these like gold lines going through his body, and he teleports them all to the ship. And it's almost like a Fortress of Solitude style looking thing, but with like gold and jewels mixed into it. And there's even like a sort of lake in one part of it that's inside the ship. And he's explaining all this stuff. And it turns out that the crew of this thing was meant to be like 6 or 7 people, and each person on the crew embodies part of what makes the ship work. So he's like I don't know if he says he's like the engine, but like another person has to become like the water cooling system, another person has to become the navigator, and they all become part of the ship. And he's basically agreed to dedicate his life to flying this ship home, and his mission now is to go and find the 6 other people it requires to take this ship back to where it's going. I feel like this is going to come back up again, just because it feels like we maybe see like who he gets to find. Not that I think we're going to spend issues with him looking around for these other people, but I would not be surprised to come back to this ship later down the line. But this was, again, like much like a lot of the issues, of all the issues even of this so far, the concepts that are here are so like big and otherworldly. They feel really cool to explore, and even Jaquita seems like she's in awe as she's like experiencing all this. The guy's name was Wilder, by the way. I just didn't know what it was. I just kind of caught it there on a page. But yeah, this is like very interesting. This is obviously very relevant to Planetary. And basically when he's saying what he needs to do, it's actually Snow who just steps in and says, yeah, Planetary will pay for all this. Like, he doesn't really have the authority to say that, but the other two just kind of let him go for it. It's like, Planetary will pay for whatever you need, no expenses will be spared, you can achieve your mission, right? And he basically talks about how good the look in their faces were as he was saying all this, as that's kind of how the book ends. Yeah, because he says, yeah, this guy's kind of a poor bastard. He's had his body crammed with alien materials and agrees to dedicate the rest of his life to doing all this stuff. But, you know, like, is that, like, saying, is it anything? But he's like, still, the look on their faces, as he was giving all their resources over to this guy so they could do this. So, yeah, the story at the end of the issue, Strange Harbors, is what the story was called. Yeah, just another super fascinating idea. I think I especially like there's kind of a motif here where we'll get like a hint of the big thing that's happened, but then it'll almost usually always be someone else like sort of telling the story of what actually happened later in the issue. It always feels that we're kind of like running into like modern day, like not fables per se, but like, you know, like we hear like these big science fiction or like larger than life ideas, but we get it kind of in the aftermath where it kind of has this mystique to it. And all the stories have had kind of that mystique built into it. And the art here is very good from John Cassidy. Very different to the previous issues because of the ship designs, very different. It almost looked like, I thought I was going to get like a fantasy issue based on the design of the ship on the front cover. But then it's actually more of like a Technomancer style thing with all this stuff. But just something that's truly alien, I guess, is the way I'd put it. But hell, he even gets to draw a page where it's crashing into the planet and there's some dinosaurs in the foreground. That's kind of neat. Like, it's kind of big and just like bombastic, and that's how long this ship has been down there looking for help. So no, I'd be very curious to come back to this, especially since, like, you know, I know that there's going to be a ship later on that has like an AI or like a life form on board. So I'm wondering if this is in some way related to that in some way or another down the line. So we'll see. Oh, you're keeping quiet because you know you don't want to spoil it. I get it. But...
Yeah. I'm not. That's, I don't want to give. This is kind of not like a key issue, but this kind of it starts tilting the hand of where the story's going to go. So because there are some things in there that add up with the next couple issues. So you know, you'll get there. Yeah. But yeah, no, very good. So I'm excited to see where we go next. Just based on the cover of the next issue, there's a lot of years on it. So it seems that there's going to be either someone lived a long time or there's going to be some time travel shenanigans. So we'll see how that goes. But this issue, I think, is a solid 8 out of 10. It's probably my least favorite in some ways, just because it takes some time to get to the juicier thing. And the idea wasn't as wowing to me as the first three, but still very good. Like, I'm really enjoying the variety and the different things in each issue. And it does genuinely feel like a better... As much as I like that Outsiders book that we just got recently, I do think this is better. I think this just feels like it's a little bit more focused and special, and a little bit... just the writing is a little bit better from Ellis than the team we had on that Modern book. But maybe that's an unfair comparison. But either way, 8 out of 10. Good stuff. Enjoying my time. So... Cool, that'll take us out to the final part of the show where we pick our favourite stuff of the week, favourite panel/moment, favourite cover, favourite art, and of course top 5 books. Last week was so difficult, Matt, because there were so many books that I had to like go through the list and highlight my short list just to try and like make sense of it. Before you do it, Yeah, anyway, what was your panel/moment of the week? All right, so I really did like the stuff with Dr. Colt and John Jones in Justice League Unlimited. I thought that was real.
But let's be honest, you're probably going with Absolute Wonder Woman, right? Yeah.
And it could literally be from any of those. But I'm gonna go to the look on Steve's face when when she touches with the metal hand and like it hits him. What she sacrificed to get him there. Really, really solid storytelling.
Yeah, there's a bunch of moments that I kind of want to pick from that. I could pick the arm reveal. I could pick the metal arm being put on. I could pick Barbara Ann's introduction, either the first scene with her or even the one where she actually meets Wonder Woman, or even the ending, because I love the plan that Diana has. It's such a big ballsy plan to make the entire city deaf for temporarily while she deals with the thing. All of that is really cool, memorable stuff. But I think I have to pick the final panel of Black Canary best of the best. Like, I just
Oof.
that like sort of like alternate, like, you know, her mother wants her to win, contradicting the ending of the previous issue, is such a like a game changer of like the emotion of the story that I have to give it to that. It's just such a perfect like mix into the thing. So that's my pick. Cover of the week. I was looking while you were talking about Silent Night. There's I'm not entirely sure which one I'm picking as my favorite. I guess I'm going with one of those, but I like the main cover for Green Lantern Dark. I think it's got a really cool look to it. The green really pops with the other lanterns and then the castle in the background. I love the main cover for Black Canary, which is like little girl Dinah looking into the mirror and seeing her mum effectively looking back at her. Or maybe even herself in her mother's classic costume, but either way, it's like a really cool image. I like the variant for Last Halloween, which is Dick with the prisoner like thing, like he's getting his mugshot taken. That's the Cliff Chiang cover, really cool. But there's a couple of really cool variants for Detective that I like. I'll shout out the Steven Shubik cover, which is like really kind of moody, and the sort of the claw of the villains in the foreground, and like everything else is sort of black and blue, but the claws are red. That really sticks out. But I'll pick the other variant for Detective, which is the Ashley Wood variant, which is Batman kind of walking in, I guess it's kind of snow, but it's got kind of like a sort of like a sepia kind of like color palette to it. It's just like a really kind of classic Batman cover. I will say, for as many books as we had this week, I didn't have like a, oh, that's my pick moment. I didn't have like a, that's obviously my favorite cover. I didn't have that. I had to kind of go looking. So, what was your pick of the week?
Yeah, so there's a Action Comics David Tulaski variant that's got Clark up in the air that I really like. Very painted kind of quality. And then there's a Somni Superman variant that's kind of got all these different versions of Superman in the Fortress of Solitude crystals. So it does this real fun kind of layout thing there. But the two I really want to showcase, there's one from Metamorpho that is the Steve Beach cardstock variant. And it just looks like an old 60s kind of almost who's a Saul Bass? See the guy that did the Vertigo and Psycho?
Actually, I do not. I mean, I recognize the name, but I can't remember.
Yeah, it kind of looks along like that. Meets Steranko. It's got a Metamorpho in the middle. It's got Mr. 3 at the top, and everything's kind of spiraling with colors. That one's nice. But my winner is the Danny variant for Absolute Wonder Woman, which has Diana and Pegasus on the cover. She has her big old. What type of sword did you call this?
Buster Sword.
The Buster Sword, and it's just. Man, it's just the way that it's playing.
I'm a little
worried
people are going to think I'm a Final Fantasy fan because I say that, but I just know it's called the Buster. I mean, I've played the remake, but it's very reminiscent of like Cloud's sword from Final Fantasy VII.
First, it was Bag of Holding. Now it's Buster Sword.
I know I'm referencing things that I'm not connected
you're tilting
to.
Your hand, sir. But yeah, that one's mine.
Fine, it's fine. I'll reference. Like I also referenced xenomorph eggs in this episode, which I do actually consider myself a fan of. So
you didn't even make one Buffy reference.
Nothing made me think of Buffy in this episode.
I know. I'm saying.
I only force it when Connor's here because it really pisses him off. Okay, that's my main motivator. All right, art of the week. What are you picking?
All right, it comes down between Hayden Sheridan for Absolute Wonder Woman and Dan Mora for Justice League Unlimited, and the fact that I've already given two of the three to Absolute Wonder Woman. I'm just gonna give it the clean sweep, and I'm gonna give it to Sheridan, whatever.
I think Sherman's art is perfect for that book, but I don't know if I'm ever going to like pick it as my favorite art. Because I think the layouts are great. I talked a lot about the layouts and the action scenes as being perfect. I think it's the perfect art for the tone of that book. But I don't know if it's the sort of art that I look at and go, I love that art. It's like a weird thing where it's perfect for what it is, but not necessarily my favorite to look at. So I like Chiang's art on Last Halloween. But if I'm picking, it kind of has to be between. I like Janin's work in Detective. It's probably it's probably Sook on Black Canary, but it's
fair.
Yeah, there's a tough couple of choices, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
All right, what's your top 5 of the week?
All right, number 1, Absolute Wonder Woman. 2 is Black Canary, Best of the Best. 3 is Justice League Unlimited. 4 is Batman: The Long Halloween, The Last Halloween. And 5 is Green Lantern Dark.
All right, this is going to be pretty similar, with maybe some in the middle swapped around. But yeah, number 1 for me is Absolute Wonder Woman this week. Number 2 is Black Canary, Best of the Best. I think those were the easy 1 and 2, without thinking about it too much. After that, it changes a little bit. I'll probably say Batman Long Halloween, Last Halloween is my number 3. Number 4. Yeah, this is where it gets a little bit tougher. I will say maybe Green Lantern Dark there. And then number 5, it's kind of a toss-up for me between Justice League Unlimited, Detective, and maybe Metamorpho or something like that. But I'll probably give it to Detective by a hair. Well, no, I really like the ending of Martian Manhunter and Unlimited. I don't know. I'm really struggling for that last slot. I'm going to say Detective by a smidge, but it's just by a smidge. But yeah, I feel bad that we got Superman in action and neither one's even in contention for me. But it's, that's what it is. It's Williamson, and then Waid didn't have a great story. Backup was good, but yeah, that's what it is.
It happens.
Yeah, but all right, there you go. I will now tell you what's coming out next week from DC Comics, and also as a updating when the annual episode's coming, which I'll tell you about in a minute as well. So don't disappear if you want to know when that's coming. But the list of books for next week are as follows. I'm still looking at this week's like an idiot. Why am I doing that? Here we go. All right, so next week we have Batman 156. We have Absolute Superman issue 3, Poison Ivy 29. We have Batgirl issue 3, Birds of Prey 17, JSA issue 2, Shazam 19, Batman Full Moon issue 3. We have Two-Face issue 2, Justice League The Atom Project issue 1, DC Presents Creature Commandos issue 4, Wayne Family Adventures 145, and then we've got a bunch of facsimiles and reprints, which I won't bother wasting your time with. So, yeah, it's still a fairly busy week next week. I think, I assume we're checking out the Atom Project, maybe? Yeah.
At least the first, just to see where this goes.
I admit, though, I look at that cover with Atoms and Captain Atom as well, and I think, I don't know if I need that in my life. But so if something gets misses the cut for me, it would probably be that. But obviously, I'm pretty hyped for most of the other things. Not Batman, because that's been whatever. But Two-Face was surprisingly great last month.
Yeah.
Full Moon, I want to check out the rest of that, and I'm excited for Batgirl and Birds. So
I'm very curious to see why they put Mike Perkins on the Atom Project.
That's fair.
That's what I want to know. So we'll see.
Yeah. And 2 writers though, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's Ryan Parrott and John Ridley. So
yeah, and sometimes I like John Ridley, but not always. So
yes,
curious. That said, though, if I'm feeling burdened by the books, that might be the one that gets the cut, just because I'm just not inherently excited about it.
I know. I feel like Batman is going just because we know that there's an endpoint.
Plus, it's interesting to talk about. Because it's not like Hush 2 is going to be good, but we're going to have things to say about it.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. But that's the ongoing joke of the show for basically 6 years at this point is Matt wants to read less Batman, but they keep putting good teams on Batman books, so he keeps having all these extra Batman books to read.
Yep.
Anyway, that brings an end to the show, other than what I was going to say about the annual episode. So normally about this time every year, end of December, start of January, we squeeze in the extra recording for the annual episode. We're not going to do that this year. Not because we're not doing it, but because there's actually just a really easy spot to put it in a little bit later. So remember a few months ago, we actually ended up taking a week off because there was a week 5 that only had one book. So we just had that book on the following week and we had the week off. That was going to happen at the end of January again, because there's barely any books out on that week 5. So instead of taking the week off, we thought, we'll just do the annual episode that week. So it'll actually be the first week of February when you get the annual episode, where we do our best of 2024 stuff. It's a little bit later than normal. I wouldn't have pushed it any later than that. That's because February wouldn't have that probably because it's too short a month unless it's a leap year. There's no way we'd push it to March. But because it's only the end of January, it just made sense to just push it to then. We'll do it that week on our regular recording day. And just the one book that maybe we were going to do, we'll just push that to the following week of books. And it just makes our life a bit easier. It means that you guys still get an episode that week. Of something, so so it's a win-win. It saves us having to scramble to fit in an extra 3-hour show at some point during the week. So that's the plan. So it's coming a little bit later this year, but it means you get to enjoy something that week instead of us just not having something. As much as I do enjoy the week off if one's presented to me, but hey,
yeah, me too.
I know you do. You always can. You're a catch-22. You're like an enigma. You're like a dichotomy of a man who complains about reading comics and doesn't want to read comics but reads too many comics. You're a paradox. That's the word I was looking for. You're a paradox. That was the word that I was trying to stall to figure out, and I couldn't think of it. God damn it!
I just like watching you stumble. It's very funny.
Well, I hope you had a good time, Matt. This is the end of the episode. Thank you very much for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next time. Keep reading DC Comics. And remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.